All right, let's call to order the public hearing of objections on amendment bylaw number Z22-05 to the Town of St. Andrews zoning bylaw Z22-01. Here we are Tuesday, August 8th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. at the council chambers at the WC O'Neill Arena Complex. This meeting is also being streamed through Zoom and Facebook. If anybody has anything as far as in support or objections to this, even though this meeting will be probably fairly brief tonight, we still will be accepting this right up until third reading. You can submit anything you have to pnopper@townofstandrews.ca. So when I get in the recording of attendance for council, I note that all members of council are in attendance with exception of Councillor Gumichel. I don't see him online. And I do want to recognize that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Beskoto-Mogadi people. Approval of agenda. I'll be looking at this first meeting is obviously just the hearing of objections itself. Could I have a mover to approve this agenda as circulated? I've got Councillor Heenan and seconded by Councillor Blanchard. I'm rusty, aren't I? All in favor of approving this agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. That's everybody that has been approved. Any conflict of interest on this one? Not seeing any. So there is no presentation. We've already received it. So the purpose of this meeting is, in fact, the hearing of objections. And once again, this is Amendment Z22-05 to the zoning bylaw Z22-01 for PID 01323591. Dominic Berlanger and Meek Elza Van de Capel, PED 230616. So the council of the Town of St. Andrews is holding a public meeting to hear objections and comments to the proposed amendment Z22-05 to the Town of St. Andrews zoning bylaw Z22-01 for PID 01323591 at 126 and 134 Reed Avenue. That's Dominic Berlanger and Meek Elza Van de Capel to rezone serviced residential zone to multiple residential one zone to facilitate a rooming house. And I hope I did not make too much of a mistake, unfortunately, with that second name. I think Mr. Berlanger, is he here this evening? He could have corrected me if so. So at this point, do we receive anything in advance? We did receive.
Your Worship, we didn't receive any correspondence in advance.
Anything directly, just inquiries on the process is the only thing I had of why it was delayed, but nothing specific to either for or against.
Nothing.
Is there? I guess call a question. Anyone online?
We had no registrants online.
This is going very simple then. Is there anyone in the audience this evening that would wish to speak in regards to the hearing of objections? Okay, I'll call one more time. Is there anyone that would like to speak in the audience regarding this hearing of objections? All right, I note that there was no submissions, no one online or in person that would like to speak to the hearing of objections. So at this point, there's no point having a question period as there was nothing discussed. So I'll be looking at 6:33 p.m. to have a motion to adjourn this meeting. Got Councillor Harlan and seconded by Deputy Mayor Akaji. All in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. Aye. This meeting has been adjourned. All right, let's call to order the regular council meeting for the Town of St. Andrews on Tuesday, August 8th, 2023 at roughly 6:45 p.m. here at the WC O'Neill Arena Complex. We're also being streamed through Zoom, Facebook. If anyone has any questions pertaining to anything about the agenda, there will be a question period at the end of the meeting, which people online or in person can ask questions, but you can also submit them by emailing pnopper@townofstandrews.ca. And I'm sure Mr. Nopper will put that on the Facebook thread for people to see his email address as well for the correct spelling. Let's get into the recording of attendance. Again, all members of council are here with the exception of Councillor Gumichel. And I do want to recognize that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Beskoto-Mogadi people. Approval of agenda. I will make an amendment, but let's get a mover and a seconder first. Could I have a mover to approve the agenda? Councillor Harlan and seconded by Councillor Neal. So now we're open to discussion. There is two items that are before you that I'd like to add under new business. One would be the active transportation fund resolution, and the other one would be regarding the use of, I guess you could call it the dental suite of the wellness center. So could I have a mover to add those two items to the agenda? I've got Councillor Heenan, seconded by Councillor Blanchard. All in favor of adding those items, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody. Those have been added. Is there any other changes? Okay, so we had a mover and a seconder on the agenda. All in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye. Agenda has been approved. Okay. Disclosure of conflict of interest. Is there any this evening? I've got Councillor Ware. Perfect. You've been consistent throughout that, so I'll look for you to recuse yourself at that time. I also will be declaring one on BTHC 230805. I've talked to the deputy mayor, and she'll chair the meeting at that particular point for that motion, and it's the perfect timing in the agenda for me to have a washroom break anyway. Is there anyone else for conflict of interest? Okay, seeing none. So we do have 3 presentations tonight, council, so this will probably be a lengthy meeting. We're not meeting as much July, August, but this one will probably be a little longer as a result. But really pleased to have the CEO of the Southwest New Brunswick Regional Service Commission, Hollis Bartlett, come here. He's going to talk to us about circular materials. Myself and Councillor Neal is actually privy to it before he filled in at our Regional Service Commission meeting for us. But Mr. Bartlett will come forward and kind of explain a little bit about what circular materials is. And I guess I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily say a decision before council, but it was one of those things you can opt in and opt out of, and it appears that almost every single municipality across the whole province, except for maybe one, has opted out. But I'll pass it over to Mr. Bartlett, and he can certainly speak to it, and just come on up to the podium so the people at home can hear you.
For those of you that don't know me, I am the CEO of the Southwest New Brunswick Regional Service Commission. And I've been asked here to talk a little bit about the circular materials deal. So I'm going to go back a little bit, if that's okay, to provide a little context to this. And I copied a little bit out of the Recycle NB website here. So Government of New Brunswick amended the Designated Materials Regulation under the Clean Environment Act to establish an extended producer responsibility program for packaging and paper products in New Brunswick. The regulation, dated October 14th, 2021, sets out the requirements for the program. Under the regulation, a brand owner must hold a valid registration to sell, offer for sale, or distribute packaging and paper products in New Brunswick. As the agency responsible for designated materials in New Brunswick, Recycle NB will oversee the packaging and paper products program. Brand owners must also choose a producer responsibility organization, otherwise known as a PRO, to operate the program. The PRO will be required to develop a stewardship plan for the collection and recycling of packaging and paper products. So that's how we got to where we are. So the legislation was put in place. The brand owners ultimately selected a company known as Circular Materials. Circular Materials is a not-for-profit that operates these programs elsewhere in the country. It's not new to Canada. This type of program is already operating in British Columbia, some parts of Manitoba, Ontario, and they're working on a few coming up next. I assume you will probably see it pretty much across the country in coming years. But anyway, New Brunswick is on the cusp of this right now. The overall intent of the program is that if you were going to sell products in New Brunswick, you are ultimately responsible for the packaging that they come in. So this isn't unlike some of the other EPR programs we've seen with tires, oil, paint, etc. The gist of it is that the more packaging you put around a product that has to be disposed of, the more it's going to cost you. So the incentive is financially to use less packaging. It's a good programming concept. So Circular Materials, being tasked with this, they had a very short timeline to roll this out. And they're rolling it out in 2 phases. The first phase is the western part of the province, which is us. And then 6 months later, it would be the eastern part of the province. The deal is they're responsible for, number one, the collection of the materials, the recyclable materials, and ultimately what happens to those materials. So the first part being the collection, what they have done is they have approached local governments, specifically in the western part of the province now, to see if they wanted to opt into the collection of the recycling products for which you would get paid. And they're paying on my understanding is a per household basis. And I don't know exactly what the offer was for St. Andrews. It would be different for each local government. Along with that comes some responsibilities. So if you're going to take on, if you're going to say, yes, we're going to be responsible for the collection of these materials, that means you're also being responsible for the public education part, the actual equipment, which is the actual carts. Right now, the blue bins that you see in the town of St. Andrews are actually property of the Service Commission. So you would have to make a deal with us, I guess, to buy those carts. You would be responsible for either collecting them yourself or contracting your regular garbage hauler to collect that material and then dropping it at the transfer station. The transfer station sort of yet to be determined, but it's likely going to be where it goes now, which is again our facility. So you would take on all of that. Beyond that, there's a quality component to the program. What they're aiming for is the 3% contamination rate. So ultimately, over 3% contamination, you may be charged for the disposal of a load of recyclable if it was overly contaminated. So there's a lot of things that go along with this, some uncertainties, some unknowns. The other option is to simply not do it by yourself. And if you do not do it, then they have to do it by legislation. And so they are responsible for the collection of. They are responsible for the public education of. They are responsible for all of the handling of recyclable materials within your local government, within St. Andrews. So that's the other option. The first option, had you said yes, you would be in place this fall. So November 1, I believe, is the date that you would have to actually start doing that. The 6-month delay puts it to May 1st if you say no. So what happens between now and May 1st is nothing different than what happens now. And May 1st, Circular Materials would have put in place an arrangement to take that over. So Circular Materials themselves don't do the collection. They would contract all that out. They're on the one side of the brand owners, and they're working for the brand owners. That's who they represent. The other side is Recycle NB, which represents our side of the house, for lack of a better word. So as of May 1st, their responsibility, according to the legislation in place, is to handle all of the recyclable material for the town of St. Andrews. In a nutshell, that's about it. What's happened around the province is that the vast majority, as you alluded to, have said no. We're going to opt out of this. We're going to let you handle this. In fact, the city of St. John was the one that I thought might say yes, because they already own their own garbage trucks, they own their own trucks, they have their own personnel, they've actually said no. They've opted out of this. As a regional service commissioner, we're certainly not going to tell any local government what to do, but I just want to lay out the facts as much as I can, objectively, and it's up to you. They are looking for an answer fairly soon, though, so that they can try to get organized. It's been tough because it's been a very short timeline to put this program together. It's very, it's difficult for getting things together, so they would appreciate an answer soon if you haven't already given it. That is basically the information that I have, Your Worship. I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
Thank you very much for that. I'm happy to be able just to explain it and kind of talk about the overall region. So from my understanding, just so everyone's aware, as far as I know, in our region, no one has opted into this. And I know Hall's touched on it, but there's some concerns with that 3% contamination. We're doing our own national standards, actually, I believe around 8%, maybe around, I might be off a little bit on that, but it's higher than 3%.
Much.
So we can do our best to educate the public, but if there's over 3% contamination, every single load essentially that goes, that's over that, the town will be fined. So you can see that it's not as easy as do you want to do it or not. You got to think we'd have to get all the equipment to get this going, and what an unreasonable time frame that would be to say it's got to be done in this budget year, right? Like, so there's a lot of challenges with this, and because of that, you're seeing pretty much every municipality municipality across the entire province saying, if you're gonna mandate, oh, sorry. Thank you. I don't do that often. I'm rusty. But what we're seeing is almost every municipality across the province saying that this was not a municipal decision. This was actually made by another level of government, and you're imposing on it. So we're not going to opt into something we weren't part of really coming up with, right? So we will discuss this later in closed session as well, because there is a legal opinion I'd like to discuss. I can't privy that, unfortunately, to the open table, but so we will go back and talk about that. But I guess since it is a more complicated thing, is there any questions for Hollis? Because I really want to give you all an opportunity to kind of understand what we're facing and kind of the challenges around it, but also get any clarifying questions with the limited information that probably Hollis has been given. He pretty much told us, I think, everything I've seen to date. So any questions? Okay, Councillor Heenan.
Yes, Your Worship and Council. With all due respect, sir, there really isn't much incentive for us to sign on to the program right now. I would definitely say, if I was voting, I would definitely say no. It's simply because it might well wait to be legislated as us to take it on as a community right now. There's no incentive to, I did some homework online and there's not a lot. So it's just that this comment's just out of due respect. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Mr. Bartlett definitely would take it out of respect, so he'd probably tell you the same thing.
I might add that if you are looking for more information on this, the Recycle NB website is actually got some really well laid out and they've got some good information there, including the work from Circular Materials that lays out their whole stewardship plan. It's pretty good. So.
And there is some advantage of this, like recycling glass will be something that will have to come in, I believe, as well. Would it be styrofoam? Is that the other one?
That's right.
Yeah.
So they are going to be adding in glass and styrofoam to the program. I don't think it'll be right away. I think right away it'll be. The idea is that when they do take it over in May, it'll be transparent. It'll be no difference, and the idea being that so residents wouldn't actually even see or feel the difference. They still put out their cart on the same day, it still gets collected and goes away. But yes, in time, they're going to be adding in glass, and I think you're going to see that not as a collection item. It'll be a depot item probably, because of the handling of glass is just that much more difficult. Styrofoam, I have no idea how they're going to do that. It could be a depot thing as well. It's a very difficult thing to deal with.
I have a question over here, then, Councillor Hurdle.
I know what the answer is going to be, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Just in terms of styrofoam, I know it's a beach debris issue. In the long-term vision, would that ever be something that would be collected as part of the program?
I don't know that they're going to collect it. It is going to be part of the program. What they even do with it, beyond me. I know that historically, there was a place that did recycle styrofoam within our region. And what they did was they compressed it and made floats out of it. It was located in Penfield. I don't believe they're in operation anymore.
Thanks. Anyone else? Mr. Spear?
Your Worship, I just, something to put along too, we were looking at the garbage contracts, some of them are going to wrap up this year, and with all this recycling, we kind of postponed everything for a year to see how it goes. Because potentially, that right now we're on a 3-in-1 cycle, and currently we're paying for the collection of the recycling, and so there's a potential that in the future that the cost of the collections could go down by 25% as Circular Materials takes over that route instead of us paying for it. And so there's the CEOs had met a long time ago, and part of the problem was there's still a lot of uncertainty tying in local governance reform. So we'd said, well, asked the board level what they think, but our overall recommendation was to take a wait and see until we could determine a longer term effect.
Absolutely. Anyone else? All right, well, I really appreciate Hollis you coming in and speaking to council on that, and yeah, we'll have to make a response fairly quickly, but we will meet in closed session again later, so thanks so much for the time.
Yep, no problem. As a new resident of St. Andrews, even though I didn't move my house, I'm happy to be here.
right, so we're on to our next presentation. It is the final report for the Charlotte County Courthouse, and I see Bill Hicks is here. Bill, the microphone's yours. Welcome back.
Okay. Thanks very much. I was thinking when the fella came in and you didn't need him and he left, I was thinking about doing that, so. But, thanks very much. So you're going to flip the. Okay, sure. So, we'll just go to the next slide. There we go. So just to go over some things we've talked about before, and just, you know, I do appreciate being here, Mayor, Council, staff. The objective of what I was engaged to do was to find out what a consensus is from the citizens of St. Andrews on the type or approach to future reuse of the Charlotte County Courthouse. And we've been working on this since early April, and it's now August, so we're actually on time, which is always good. So let's go to the next slide. So again, not to go over stuff we've already gone over, but this is really important. The Charlotte County Courthouse is both a National Historic Site and a Provincial Historic Site, plus it's part of a National Historic District. So those three designations suggest right off the bat that it's a very important building from a built heritage and a historical point of view. And it's always important to remember that it's the provincial designation that comes with the regulatory process that require permits and whatnot. National Historic Sites don't require permits, and in the report, which I know you've all read from cover to cover, it is very clear with some statements from Parks Canada about their approach to their sites. You know, they encourage people to be conscientious in dealing with the built heritage component and the historical component, but they don't regulate what you do with property, whereas the province does. So right now, it's not, I think we'd all agree, it's not very sustainable, it's not too much going on there, but it has great potential. So I think we went through a pretty comprehensive engagement process, way more than I thought we were going to at the beginning, but that's always good. So to start with, we've talked to 30 organizations and individuals, including treaty and Aboriginal rights holders, cultural organizations, business development organizations, government departments and agencies, experts in various fields, and obviously town council and staff. We had an open house, and that was attended by about 30 people. It was back in June. It was interesting because I thought it would be people would walk around and stick stickers on these incredible presentation boards we had made, which in the end they did, but it really turned into a kind of a question and answer period, which was really informative. And certainly for me, they were really engaging questions. So it was really useful to go through that process. And again, people were able to put their sticky notes on various presentation boards. Then, of course, we had the public survey. And it was a mail-out survey, plus it was online. And it asks some sort of high-level questions, and surveys are really great for getting that high-level kind of information, base information. Not a lot of detail, but it told us a few things for sure. Overwhelmingly, the consensus was that the courthouse should have a civic or cultural or a mixed civic and cultural use. And that the courtroom especially, obviously the exterior is so important we don't even deal with it because we know it's so important and we're not going to mess with it as much as possible. But the interior, the courtroom, it was just so clear from the surveys, the comments, the discussions at the open house, and those various other conversations that the value of that intact courtroom from an interpretive point of view was huge. I always hesitate to say these things, but more than a lot of places that say they have an intact space or they're an intact building, the courthouse here is completely intact. A few odds and ends that aren't original, but in that intactness, it is able to tell a story that's 180 years old about the legal system in New Brunswick, the good parts, the bad parts, and the fact that it was used from 1840 to 2017 as a courtroom, again, reinforces the idea that it has huge heritage interpretive value. The other, we talked about ownership, and certainly initially people were very clear that they feel that the town should retain ownership. Now, we didn't give them a lot of options. It was purely, should the town own it? Should a not-for-profit own it? And then, obviously, private sector, that kind of thing. So we knew most people would not, deal with the private sector, but, had to put it in there. And I think the consensus of, strong consensus of ownership by the town is because people feel a level of security that the building's going to be in good hands, going to be taken care of, all of those things. So completely reasonable. And the question basically asked, was there support for ongoing municipal funding, although I don't think we had the word ongoing in there, but municipal funding for cultural use of the building. And again, consensus was that there was, that there should be. So we also looked at other things. We looked at the 2018 engagement session. And what was interesting, if you look at the votes and the options, if you take museum, performance venue as possible uses together, if you take those together and you consider the comments, over 60% favored a cultural use. And the council chamber, or by extension, town offices ranked really low, which I was a little surprised at. But again, it's cultural. We also looked at architectural plans that were done when the building was transferred to the town. There were a couple of sets that were sort of a preliminary set and then another group, I believe. Anyways, we looked at all of those, and they talked about extensions or no extensions and how you'd arrange it for municipal offices. We looked at planning, municipal planning documents. We looked at various submissions that had been given to the town and presentations related to how people or organizations felt that the building should be reused. And we looked at a lot of other related material. So we looked at some National Trust for Canada. They put out some very good documents on how to reuse heritage buildings and types of organizations around that. So pretty good sort of document review. We also looked at comparables. Now, we contacted quite a few, but we kind of focused in on three here, Carleton County Courthouse, the Hampton Town Hall, and the Siemens Hospital in Miramichi. And those three situations relate to this situation in different ways, but they are really good examples of how heritage buildings have been repurposed while maintaining heritage value for sustainable reuse. So that's basically what the engagement process said. And that's what we were asked to do. Now, it's pretty hard to just do that and not sort of think further ahead. So what we've done is we've taken the results of that engagement process and all those things we reviewed, and it came up with a proposed reuse scenario. So basically, there's three major areas that we would suggest the courthouse could be used for in a sustainable way. So first is interpretive experiences. Kind of focused on that earlier, but again, there is huge interpretive value in the courthouse. And it's the courthouse and the jail and the common that together tell this remarkable story of the justice system. Again, the good parts and the bad parts, and the good history and the bad history, over a long period of time. So, if sort of understood and accepted and promoted and talked about and communicated and presented properly, it really does have an amazing interpretive attraction value. So, and it's not just the courthouse. Right now, the Legion is in there with some interpretive material. The weights and measures, which I frankly wasn't aware is a hugely important collection. And there was a lot of discussion as we went through this about the architecture of St. Andrews. We all know it's amazing, but there's no real focus that starts to talk about it in an overall way. So the courthouse could provide that kind of focus for architecture in St. Andrews. The next sort of, so there's the interpretive experiences and then heritage organizations. Now, St. Andrews Civic Trust is already in there, and we would suggest that they stay there, and they can actually become a part of developing these interpretive programs. And the archives, and I think we've all recognized it, needs more space, but primarily needs a space, a public face space that's a little more suitable than the space inside the jail. So the jail continues to be the storage facility for the archives, has pretty amazing environmental controls upstairs, which I had no idea they were up there, but good for them. And but the old judge's chamber is used as that public face for the archives, so it's a research and reading room, but it's also a space that can be used for all sorts of different community meetings, and overflow space for other conferences and whatnot that are going on in the building or in the community. The next use is the one that we're all kind of sort of wondering about, and that's the revenue generating ability of the building. So again, because of its uniqueness, there's real opportunity to create a modest event venue. And I really want to emphasize, this is not to take away from other event venues in the community. It's to complement those. And what we would suggest is that we make some modifications to the historical elements in there, primarily the railings, the bar, and the ability to move some of that furniture. And we make those historical elements so that they're removable and replaceable securely. So when there's an event that's going to happen in there and we want a clear open area, those historical elements can be removed, stored, and you have a space that sort of my rough initial calculations, you could have 60 to 80 seat space in that courtroom. You build a movable modular stage that again is movable and storable, and you could hold events in there and charge for these events. That's where the revenue generation comes in. So you could have weddings and celebrations, lectures and presentations, musical performances, theater, meetings and conferences, gallery and exhibition space, training activities that the building's already used for some training activities. I still think there's potential for the province to use the space, and other yet to be identified community and social spaces. So that's how we would suggest the building could be used, and used sustainably. The next thing, and this all comes from again this working with the National Trust. How's this place going to operate? Who's going to own it? How's it going to work? And they talk about owners, operators, and third parties. So for the time being, as the consensus from the public survey said, the town of St. Andrews continues to own that building. The operator, though, is a new not-for-profit company that's put together, and it would operate, or we're suggesting it could operate, not only the courthouse, or oversee operations is probably a better way to put it. The courthouse, Sheriff Andrews' house, the museum, and the blockhouse, and maybe even Minister's Island, but that would take talk with the province. So the point is that in a similar way that the heritage value of the courthouse is so substantial, the story behind these sites and the connection of these sites, if they were looked at together, they each tell their own story for sure, but together they could be a much stronger tourism, visitor, historical interpretation product. And then third parties are all those other organizations that support the operation of the courthouse and of that not-for-profit company. And they're listed in the document, and they include business agencies, other cultural groups, potential clients. So if you look at, we've got the operator, we've got an organization that's going to run things, and we have a support mechanism to make sure it works. Then we looked at municipal or government roles, 3 levels of government. So, some might look at this and say it's fairly ambitious, and I think it has to be ambitious to actually make this work, make that place sustainable. We would suggest that the position be created and an executive director be hired to oversee that not-for-profit company and do all the things that need to be done to make this work. Obviously the municipality has to provide leadership, ongoing improvements, has to be discussion about operational funding, and involved in that relationship with third parties. So there's no question that the municipality would have the biggest role in terms of levels of government of making this work. The province, again, we still think that there's potential for the province to use that space. Ideally, it would be great if they could reuse it as part of the justice system, but if not, there's likely other uses that we could talk to them about. We feel that they can provide the province, New Brunswick Museum, they can provide expertise in a number of areas, and they also have funding programs that can be applicable. Plus, they're the ones who provide the permits for that regulatory process. Federal government, I still feel, and we talked to some officials with parks, and they're going, oh gosh, no, we're not going to be doing any more right now, But I think they're there are opportunities for operational funding from Park Canada and funding in other areas, plus they have expertise that, in terms of interpretation and those types of things, that could be useful. So then we went to the next step and said, so how long, what would be the time frame to put this together? So at first I had summer of 2023, and it was made clear, let's start in 2024. So, and again, it's listed out in detail in the document, so I'm not going to go through it. But basically, 2024 is planning, preparation, and organization. So you would create that position, hire that executive director, create that not-for-profit corporation, do your strategic plan, do your comprehensive building assessment, all of those types of things. You'd look at 2025 to start to implement that, and by 2026, it's not unreasonable to think that the courthouse plus the larger organization could be in full operation, and that's when you could start to consider the possibility of transferring that property if it makes sense at that time. And that's something that that time would tell. So in a nutshell, well, pretty big nutshell, that's what we've determined. It's the outcome of the engagement process, plus some general proposals for going forward with the building.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hicks. I'll open up to council for questions or comments. Anyone like to kick us off? Councillor Harlan.
Thanks, Bill. That was a very comprehensive report, and I appreciated being part of the process. I participated in the town hall, and I would agree with you. It was a great opportunity to engage with residents, clarify, generate some good energy. I thought it was a really productive session. What I find interesting is that in our town package, in our council package this month, we received a report around some of the numbers for some of the other venues. So the Ross Memorial Library, the Sheriff Andrews House, and the Blockhouse. And when I was reviewing the material, I was really struck by the fact that visitors to those sites has drastically declined. I agree we're looking at pre-COVID and post-COVID. But even from 2022, we're still not hitting the mark. And as a unique community, as St. Andrews is, I think those are underutilized, promoted resources. Where what you're suggesting in this report is that we create an entity to really promote all of our historic tourism, which I find very intriguing and.
Yeah. So what's interesting, St. Andrews is in the built heritage business in a sense. And it's, the interpretation of that and the presentation of that is a product. And it just doesn't, the courthouse seems to be the opportunity to focus all of that and create a much a more comprehensive, more promotable tourism attraction or visitor attraction. I don't want to keep using that word tourism. Now, when we interpret the courthouse, we have to be careful. We have to ensure that we tell everybody's story. I talk about that in the book, and we have to tell complete stories. We have to engage with Pescatore Makati on an ongoing basis. And we have to talk about Black history. But all of that and the connections between these sites is a huge again, I hate to use the word, but a huge product that put together right, presented right, will in fact attract people. And I would venture to say that a lot of people who come to visit St. Andrews, they may go to this attraction or that attraction, but they don't necessarily have the ability to get sort of an overall view of the story of this community and what was here before this community. So it's, yeah, there you go.
Councillor Han.
Yes, Your Worship, and thank you, Mr. Hicks, for a wonderful presentation. Just on the coattail of Councillor Harlan's remarks about the population dropping in people visiting, like the establishments that we have around town, I'm not sure if any of the stats or anything that we have available portrays the change in the tourist or visitor market. Like younger generations, I hate to say it, but younger generations, I'm sorry, they're not interested. And so my big fear is that we see a decline in visitor population. And it has a lot to do, if parents come here with children, they'll only do the things that the children wish.
Mm-hmm.
They will only do the meals that the children wish. They're not as keen as we were years ago about visiting a library or an interpretation center. And that's what worries me considerably, is the fact that we can do whatever we want to do, to interpret, to do what we wish, but are we going to have the population to come in?
Yeah, no, completely valid. A couple of things to say about that. But, I mean, having said that, there are approaches to engaging younger people using the technology that's out there that's way beyond me, but it's out there. And I think if those types of technologies are used, you may reach that younger generation. I mean, my experience is if you present things in a way that is of interest or is with the technology that's of interest, I mean, we could do it like Minecraft, you know? I mean, there are ways to use gaming to do interpretation. I mean, my 7-year-old granddaughter has told me that. So, and just on the Parks Canada thing, I was in PEI on the weekend. We'll come to St. Andrews next year. We've been here before, but we went to PEI, and when we go to PEI, we have to go to see Anna Green Gables because Sandy, my wife, is a librarian, and she's all hooked up on that. So, but when we went there, it was like 10 years ago, and when we went there this time, there's a huge new visitor center where you enter. There's gift shops. There's food. There's all these things, and that's a huge investment on the part of Parks Canada for a National Historic Site. Not taking anything away from that site, the courthouse has, I'm willing to say, a much deeper, older, longer story. That's somewhat relates more to the history and development of this province, this country, and those types of things. So I think we have to really work on getting the right amount of contribution, whether it's funding or expertise, from both the federal government and the provincial government. And we have to start to look at techniques for engaging everyone.
Absolutely.
You mentioned, Mr. Bill, You mentioned, Bill, about technology and how it can create interest for younger recipients. Well, somehow I don't see the courthouse and technology dovetailing too well. You know,
Yeah, well,
do you know what I'm saying? Like, I just don't see that. The people who really like the courthouse, like the building, like when we talk about having the movable stage and things, but having technology available just to bring the children or younger generation, let's use that, younger generation in, kind of defeats the purpose, in my opinion. Like, the courthouse is history, and that's important to us in the town. That's important to every citizen in St. Andrews, that we have the courthouse. And I am not saying we don't need the courthouse. I'm saying that we have to figure a way in order to get the courthouse used. Because I sit by the days and see nothing happening there. And it's really a travesty. And it has to be set at the level of children, young adults. It can't be set at, because us older generations are soon going to be gone, and the parents will not go there unless the younger generation want to go with them. So that, to me, is an important part of whatever we do at the courthouse. And I don't see putting Game Boys in the lobby of the courthouse personally, but I mean, if that's what it takes, then I guess it is. But
And you know, I'm certainly not an expert on that.
no,
But,
thank you.
and those are the things that would become part of a more detailed plan and approach. I guess what I'm saying is that there are likely options out there to engage a broader demographic.
I think just on that, Councillor Heenan, I think look, the technology is one thing, but I think it all ties back into experiential tourism. So when people go to things nowadays, you know, of course, there's those percentage of visitors that are just looking for their Instagram photo of our great vacation. But the truth is people want to have a hands-on activity. So maybe it's some type of case that they get, and they get to vote on what is the outcome. Like, you know what I mean? Maybe there's something like that would make it a little more interactive and dynamic to grab the next generation. So I think that's kind of the play there a little bit. I guess you know, I'll open up to more council, but I guess for myself, Mr. Hicks, is I don't think I, in my mind, really probably set it up for the best chance of success for you, because I was really hoping for kind of that aha moment, like that's exactly what we should be doing with that building. And to be completely honest, I don't get that from this presentation. My concern was that we just continue to do status quo, and I appreciate the fact that you did so much public consultation, but when I look at the plan and I look at kind of what the community has already, and I'm not talking about pubs and clubs, because we've got some great ones for music venues, but we also have like an establishment like Drew Haven that has a nice stage with beautiful acoustics where performances can already happen. Huntsman's got a wonderful stage, and they have musical venue activity. Again, these are all inside. We have a theater in here that has a stage that's underutilized right now that could have musical performances. We have a stage at Sir James Dunn Academy. We have a stage at the New Brunswick Community College. So I'm having a hard time really looking at that as being the main opportunity of the building for the public to gather. And I know that there's other uses between the Royal Canadian Legion, the St. Andrews Civic Trust, and archives, but I question if a music venue is really another one is what this community.
I'm not saying specifically a music venue.
But
I'm saying an event venue.
Even an event venue, and then you've got artifacts essentially that need to be moved every time. And I can tell you that someone that's in that, every time I have a podium at my workplace at Kingsbury, and every couple of years I have to replace it, because when you move assets, they get dinged up, and you can be as careful as you want, but you've got volunteers, you might have students, and all these kind of these archives that are at the courthouse. I'm really concerned moving them in and out of a tiny storage room is the best use of what it is. So, and these other organizations, they're great organizations, but you know, the archives they're really working hard to try to find a way to be sustainable. So the chance of any of these bringing in revenue, and you look at the museum and the lack of revenue we get from that, just on the outside, what this is just straight up for the taxpayers. It'll be another huge building of heritage significance, and we all want to protect that. We have to protect that. No one is debating that. But ultimately, this plan to me falls directly on the taxpayer of St. Andrews to
Yep.
fund another building, because I don't see a sustainable revenue source from this presentation. And I know I'm being very, very critical,
No,
but
that's fine.
that's my concern.
But I guess what we're saying here is that this is what the information that we got from an engagement process. Based on that information, here's an approach to using that building. But the town is going to have to do this, is going to have to hire somebody, create a position, hire somebody, probably deal with ongoing operational funding to help it through. So, yeah, no, but on the same hand, you look at it as not just, oh my God, another burden for the town in terms of another building. These places together and the municipal funding that goes into them is an investment that, creates an attraction that, adds to the overall attraction of the community and can generate a modest bit of revenue on its own, but contributes to that larger sort of revenue generation based on, what this town's all about.
Councilor Hurdle.
Thank you, Worship. I don't want to bury your comments. And again, I don't think any of us are trying to put you on the spot.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Listen, I've been put
really,
in the spot lots.
yeah, I appreciate it. And on top of which, trying to get consensus on hot topics is often very difficult to do. So I really appreciate the time, energy, effort you've put in to generate consensus. And I think that what we're just expressing our concerns about a building that we care a great deal about. And sometimes consensus doesn't necessarily show us the way to the answer that we're looking for. In this case, I think what we're concerned about is obviously, and I hate to use the term problem because it's not a problem to have a community that has this building in it, but the problem is that it's not sustainable. And you have that built into the beginning of your report as well, that the current status is not sustainable. And I think we agree we mean financially sustainable when we talk about that. It's currently too much of a burden on the residents financially to continue to support that. So what we're looking for is a solution to, that financial sustainability question. And what I see here is more investment from the community, which doesn't really, in my mind, solve for the initial problem, right?
Yeah. No, I for sure. I mean, this suggests that there's going to be ongoing financial commitment from the town. No question. But it also talks about, this is a resource that's of a level that Parks Canada should be operating at, because it's got such a huge story to tell and it's so intact. And
won't disagree
they're
with
not,
you on that.
and they're not.
Yeah.
They provide operational funding for the blockhouse, which is great.
Yeah.
But this story deserves that too. And getting Parks Canada to invest in New Brunswick is part of a much larger issue that's been going on for years. What they invest in New Brunswick relative to what's invested in Nova Scotia and PEI and Newfoundland. The little piece of the pie is pretty small in New Brunswick, but that doesn't mean that part of the scenario is getting Parks Canada operational funding for this site.
Right. It's a challenge, right?
Yeah, no question.
Thank you.
Any other member of council? All right, well, thank you very much, Mr. Hicks. Appreciate the presentation.
problem.
And I know it is, acceptance of the report is later in the agenda, so thank you again for the
Okay.
presentation.
Cool, thanks.
And our last one is Mark Finley coming forward from the St. Andrews Dog Park Committee. So they have a proposal for an alternate park location within the Harry Mallory Sports Field. So welcome, Mark, and thanks for waiting.
Thank you. Also, Kara Harvey will actually lead us off, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so yes, I'm presenting alongside Mark tonight, but thank you, Your Worship, Town Council, and fellow community members for having us here. We are representing the St. Andrews Dog Park Committee. And we're going to be talking about fundraising, some challenges we faced, the new proposed location, which Mark is going to elaborate on, feedback we've gotten so far from the town, and then next steps. So first of all, we're going to have a lot of cute puppy photos, so buckle up for that. We started out with our fundraising, taking tickets for the Tall Ships stand. We've done a trivia night, an online auction, paddle fest, bandana sales, photo shoot, mini grant applications, community cleanup. We had members doing like meter sponsorships, and people could pay by the meter to do like ditch cleanup, basically. So that was something that you probably saw some of our members out doing on Saturdays. Also had a few community donors, and then most recently the sale of dog beer in partnership with the St. Andrews Brewing Company and Crafty Beasts. Some challenges we faced so far. We found that the fundraising target has been a bit high based on our capacity, kind of as a group. We all have full-time jobs. We're all trying to do our best and do what we can. But for the current location that was approved, we were to raise $60,000, and so far we've raised 13, and that's over a year of doing the best we can. We've had we're coming up on some issues with committee kind of burnout and turnover. It's a bit of a time commitment for the leaders of this, and also all of us kind of face different, moving different life changes. So there's been a lot of turnover within the committee, and with that, there's been a lot of kind of ramp up and learning process and that type of thing. And also the high dollar goal has led to some community members hesitating to donate, thinking that their donation won't have an impact. That's something that we've noted quite frequently, and also that because we didn't have a confirmed, or trying to think, how do I want to phrase that? Okay, I'll touch on that again later. So Mark is going to touch on the new proposed location.
All right, so when we met last year, we had a couple different locations on the go, one down Queen Street, and then up at the ballpark. So initially, at the end of that meeting, we kind of had an agreement that we were going to build in the woods section just up behind the ball field where the trail comes out of the woods. Once that was kind of reviewed and an assessment done of how much it was going to cost, it was around $120,000. So the commitment from the town at that time was 50% if we raise 50%, so that's where the $60,000 comes from for our number. So walking my dog through there, as we do every day, got thinking, I don't know why it needs to be there when there's already green space on the other side of the fields between the ballpark and the roads. Chatted with some dog park people in the dog park group. We have a few people here tonight. Other people kind of agree that this would be a viable location. So what I kind of put together, which this is not to scale because I'm not an engineer, was kind of two separate designs. So one would just be one big design where you're about 60 by 60. This square here would be for like your smaller dog section. And then 60 by 150 for the larger dog section. And then you see there's a line here to separate the two of them. So that there is about 700 700 feet worth of fencing. The other one we looked at was maybe splitting it up, because here there's actually a little section you could do a 60 by 60 and then still you do your 60 by 150 here. So it actually breaks up the small park and the big park from each other. There is a bit of concern maybe from some people about how this gets a little slope down here. You cut this back a bit because you're not going out that other 60 feet. It kind of cuts back out from some of that slope. Some reasons why we went with this is, as Kara already touched on, community burnout, turnover. We have done a lot of fundraising, so now it's almost starting to go back to the same people and asking them for more money. So people aren't going to want to keep giving over. The same people aren't going to want to keep giving over and over again. We have put in a few different grants. get a little bit, but it hasn't been a significant amount like we initially thought might happen. So kind of a speculation if we were to go with this. Actually, if you don't mind switching to the next page. So here's just, I don't know if you can see it from there, but the fencing costs. So the most expensive version of this fencing, I asked for a quote for a 6-foot high fence and a 4-foot high fence. So I'm just going to speak to the 6-foot high fence, and the most expensive one, I'd rather go most expensive. So it's $27,000, almost $28,000, plus your HST comes out to just under $32,000. So with this space essentially being ready to go, I'm sure there's going to be a few things that need to be done. We do need signage, maybe benches. So kind of a rough estimate of maybe $8,000 at most for a few other things, other than having the fence installed. So we're kind of speculating maybe around a $40,000 total. That means if we're still at raising 50%, we now only need to raise $20,000 versus $60,000. And as far as what the town is responsible for as well, if you're still willing to meet halfway, is instead of $60,000 for the town only requires $20,000 as well. So it's saving the town $40,000. It's getting us to the goal faster. And this is just something that having that target closer, it's just kind of kicks it into high gear for people to really get focused on that fundraising and get to the finish line. So one thing about parking is, because I understand that right along the road there, it is non-parking. We'd probably have to verify that. But when you first drive up into where we're proposing, and it kind of starts to turn around the dog park, there's a little rock wall. I didn't take great photos, but there's a little rock wall right here by where the new trail goes. If that was pushed out, you could already probably fit 5 or 6 cars there right now. But if you push that wall out maybe 5 or 8 feet, I'm not sure exactly, you could actually park cars horizontally through there, and you could get quite a few cars in there. So parking wouldn't be an issue, in my opinion, because it would be right next to the dog park. And this is just kind of just for visualization. So here's the 120 that we're currently trying for, and you can just see, like, compared to where we'd like to be, we still have $47,000 to go if we're still trying to raise $60,000 versus maybe only $7,000 to go. This is just some feedback that we got. We actually included feedback for people who didn't approve of that location, just to show that we weren't being biased and only showing what we want you to see. So there has been some chatter about going back to Queen Street, so I just want to be upfront about that. So people have been asking about that again, because we did talk about that last year. Public engagement wasn't super excited about that location, but just want to throw that out there as well. So we do have more fundraising that we want to do to get to that final goal. Hopefully, maybe if it's 20,000, we're, like we say, we're close to it. So we have been talking, or Kara's been working on beer and burger sales at Seasons by the Sea. We did talk about the dog beer. So the St. Andrews Brewing Company has been selling dog beer for us, and it is actual beer for dogs, because people keep asking me, is the beer for dogs or for people? It is dog beer. So yeah, you buy a can, pour it in your dog's dish, and you have a beer with your dog at the brewery.
I wish I knew that before I had 4 of them.
Probably very nutritious. I think they're like chicken broth.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It would have been.
For the record of the minutes, I'm kidding.
Yeah, throw me off now. So we do need to do a bit of research, because we do need to work on a sign. And we have talked to some people about advertising, and people who'd be willing to put some money, a decent amount of money into it if they're going to get some advertising for it. So what does signage look like for that? So there's another way to raise some money, and then we do need to figure out how these signs are going to be made. Working on that. So yeah, grant applications, Cooks, TD Bank, CARES working with Pet Value and Trupanion. So yeah, so we're still working away at seeing what we can do to bring in more money for the dog park. Anything you want to add before they have any questions?
No, I was going to say, with a lot of those larger, more corporate sponsors, they do want like a very detailed package up front. They want to know for sure, how everything is, how it's getting funded, how, like, what the timeline is, the exact location confirmed. Obviously, they're if they're going to donate a lot of money, that's perfectly within their realm to want to know those things. So they wanted me, for the most part, to come back after we've had this conversation with you and had kind of a firmer understanding, firmer knowledge
Yeah,
of
more
what
accurate.
the plan was
Yeah.
going forward.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the presentation. Council, any questions? Councilor Hurdle.
Thanks. Awesome presentation, guys. Thank you very much. My own question when I'm looking at the map, because I use the trail quite often through there and on the trail committee as well, I don't see it. I don't see the trail on the picture that you have. So I'm wondering
I
if...
use Google Earth for that,
Yeah.
so it's the last time Google passed over, the trail wasn't there.
But would it have to move because
No.
of that? It fits
No.
in fine. There would be no issues in terms
Exactly.
of...
Next time you're walking through there, so when you're walking like right by the fields, there's a set of trees that have been planted.
Right.
And then it would start just on the other side of the trees, which is actually perfect because those trees are going to grow up to be shade. So once those are big enough, they'll actually offer shade in the dog park, which is also perfect because when we built the dog park, we would want trees for shade anyways, and those are already there. So that's another cost saved.
But no concerns just regarding the proximity to the road and the road going to the driveway. It's all okay with you guys?
That hasn't been a
Yeah.
concern that's
Okay.
come up that I'm aware of.
We had, there was 8 people, there was 10 total, 8 plus us. We had people come down to the location to give their opinions, and that wasn't an issue that was brought up, I don't think, by anybody.
Not the proximity of the road, I
No,
don't think.
proximity to the road, no. No, sufficient height of the fence. I mean,
Yeah.
the dogs are just going to be chasing each other and, and that type of thing, so.
Thanks very much.
Thanks. Councilor Blanchard.
Oh, thanks, Your Worship. Thanks for the presentation. Just a question to staff, actually. Has Public Works had a chance to look at the location? Are there any concerns about drainage, about the slope, about anything that they've noted?
Well, I guess the top concern would be the slope. That we took some shots there, and the slope runs from about 9% as it closer to the entryway into the Mallory Sports Field, and the 26% kind of at the edge of the ball field. And realizing that for accessibility purposes, 5% is kind of the preferred grade, it still seems fairly steep to us. And that'd be probably our number one concern, is that back in the day when we were, previous locations, we talked about accessibility to water. Right now, there's not a lot of accessibility to water there, although a line could be run probably, say 80 yards, I think, is where the line comes into the building that's there. So that's doable. I think there's better locations. If council's okay with this, we could put this as a maybe, but I think I understand the problems with fundraising.
Yeah.
But it's to find a location that kind of is flatter, that doesn't need all the prep work of doing it, that meets some of your goals, but I don't think it met the goals that you had set a year ago when you had your first
Yeah.
discussions on it.
Yeah.
Yep.
We have thought with the other location that there was we thought that there was going to be some more sizable donations from within certain people that we talked to initially, and it just didn't happen. They had committed that money to other projects. In terms of the accessibility thing, I've been talking to it's Ability New Brunswick about this location, and they were able to provide me with some documents. They said that they don't have any documentation specific to dog parks within New Brunswick currently. It's different with every kind of outdoor space, and it's something they're trying to develop is for dog parks, but to apply like playground parameters to a dog park isn't necessarily going to be completely transferable, because it's not going to be humans running up there. It's good the dogs are going to be accessing that area. They did give me some really good ideas about like the height of the latch and things like that on the gates, and other ways that it could be, like the accessibility could be brought to its best possible state. So I'm happy to share those with you, those documents that they sent along. They're based on some work done by Parks Canada.
And with reference to the water was a nice to have, but it's not a mandatory. Most dog parks I go to don't have water. With that new walking trail going through there, it goes by the stream, which is awesome because I take my dog for a drink there every day when we walk by. So there is actually close running water. So water in the park isn't a necessity, just would have been a nice to have.
We also, while I'm thinking of it, noticed that the drainage there was good there. We went one day when we had the people come in, like from the community, and take a look. The upper area by the soccer field was actually quite soggy to walk around on. And when we were walking through that area to show people the space, it was significantly drier down there because of the slope. So that was actually turned out to be a silver lining in some ways.
100%.
Yeah.
Councillor Harlan.
So you had indicated in the two different drawings, the one that's separated by the road,
Yes.
that has a slightly different slope?
It is slightly less sloped right there. So that was one kind of spot if there was real concern about accessibility. If someone was to come with a dog that doesn't have maybe the mobility, if they had a bigger dog, for example, and that was empty, they could still use that.
Right.
Also, by separating the two and not having them on the same side, the dog park doesn't necessarily have to go as far because you're not including the small dog park and then the
Right.
large.
Right.
And so we're not hitting that deeper slope that kind of reaches closer to the end. Like it's more slopier.
Of course.
More sloped, closer to the end. So
Right.
by moving the smaller dog park to the other side, you can bring it away from that higher slope grade.
Okay. And can I just follow? So Chris, you indicated that there potentially could be other areas?
We'd have to revisit. There's no doubt, previous council members, we looked everywhere far and wide in town about it. And so we'd have to bring some of those up for discussion again, or maybe look from people that might be able to sell. This might be fine. I just have, personally, I'm not an engineer. Maybe we'd have an engineer look at it. Just the slope is significant enough that I do have concerns with, being an accountant, not an engineer, but most of them are in flatter surfaces. And some of them eventually incorporate toys or whatever you call them, structures for the dogs. Some of them do, at least the one in Sussex, I guess, was the one I noted.
Sussex actually has a pretty decent slope on
Yeah,
theirs.
do they? I'll stop and have a look. I'm heading up there next
Some of
week.
them do. I mean,
Yeah.
there's lots that I've been to. I've taken my dog to Halifax and things like that, and they have agility slopes and all that stuff. But in terms of, I think I can speak for the committee that we would rather have something and have it built and not have agility like toys and things in it than wait for 5 years to get something built and be able to have agility things in it.
Right. Yeah, there's this kind of thing, if we go to review more locations and it's another meeting, we're more months down the road. So it is really hard to fundraise when we don't have a number. We kind of have a number at 60,000, but then you tell that to people and they're like, oh, well, you're never going to do that.
We're never going to hit it, so like, why are we donating to something that the money will get reverted, or, it's, yeah.
Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just to add on to what's already been said, I guess, but I was fortunate enough to be able to attend the meeting they had out there when they actually had, and Mark actually had the site sort of roughly staked out. And personally, I thought it was probably a pretty good option. Being able to visually see it, where it sat on that piece of property, like the proximity to the trail and the road and everything, it seems to fit in there quite well. There were a bunch of dogs present at the meeting. None of them seemed to mind the slope at all. And again, I think the slope, to be honest, actually plays into their favor because of the runoff. As Kara mentioned, the soccer field was soaking wet that day, and this was dry. So for the sake of the dogs running around and, they're eventually going to tear it up, wear it out, I think the slope actually is beneficial. Where they have the doors located up at the top, right off the trail, again, I don't see accessibility really being that big an issue there. And the parking, again, I thought was another viable option. As I think Mark mentioned, there is already, there's room for at least 5-6 cars there now. So I think, again, moving forward, again, to me, it was a viable option. Like you said, we don't have to go into the trees. We don't have to clear cut more of that forested land. And this is essentially ready to go. So I think it's definitely worth consideration. Thank you, guys.
I don't know if any of our fellow committee members, are they allowed to speak if anybody has any feedback?
Yeah.
Input.
Yeah, I don't know. They're all in favor.
Councilor
Hopefully
Blanchard?
they're all in favor.
Yeah, just one quick follow-up there. I mean, where the town, where we essentially have budgeted, or, well, I don't know, if we actually get this into the last budget, I think,
I don't think it's in the, no.
I guess an agreement then to cover 50% of the costs is sort of where we were at a roughly around $60,000. If the slope was a real issue, is there not a possibility of some minor infill with a small retaining wall or something like that? If we are going to be saving on other costs. I'm just wondering if that slope was a major issue, would that be a possibility, perhaps in that area, just to bring it up a little bit more so it's not as much of a concern?
I'm going to guess the answer is anything's a possibility.
Well, yeah, and then it goes back, you're comparing the prices of where you were to where you're going if you're adding that stuff, so.
Councilor Heenan?
Yes, Your Worship and Council. I just find it kind of amusing that we're talking about a slope being a problem in a dog park. Because I feel that a dog likes to run. So I don't really know why there's an issue with the slope, because dogs that I've walked for years and years love hills, love slopes. I think it's a benefit that they have something besides flat. That's just my opinion. And as I say, I'm far from an expert on either slopes or dogs, or I'm not a dog whisperer, but I say they don't like it, they just don't come back. You know, I mean, they won't use the slope, that's all. Thank you.
Your Worship, though, when I was talking slope, it was never about the animals. I'm a dog owner, too. It's always about the people that have to control the animals. We're a destination of seniors here, and some of our own internal documentation is on 5%. So just to be clear, the animals, I'm always sure, most of them are little dogs with low centers of gravity that, you know, can climb up something 4 times the height of that. So it's always about the owners that have to control the dogs and deal with them inside the gates. I've never been to a dog park with my pets, but I'm assuming they have to go in at least occasionally to bring them back out, if nothing else, because they're having so much fun, they have to leash them up and drag them away.
Yeah,
And so
expectation is you're in the dog.
Yeah,
You
and so-
never leave your dog unattended, so you definitely are in the dog park with
So
them.
that was, perspective of staff was on the people in there, not the animals themselves.
You were talking about small animals in particular. So the area what we were proposing with the 2 separate areas, the area for the small dog, it's flat. So
Pretty flat.
pretty flat, yeah. It's not 0% grade. I'm not going on record to say it's 0%, but
Yeah.
it's much flatter.
But to your point, Mr. Spears, they do have to go in there to pick up droppings and other things, right? So
Yeah.
it needs to be accessible as much as possible for to your point, for senior citizens as well, so, or
So-
anyone with mobility concerns.
I guess right now where it's green space, it technically still doesn't meet grading if someone was to walk across the lawn. So I guess I don't know if putting a fence around it makes it a lot different, but maybe it does.
We could also arrange, like with our committee, to have a standing Saturday morning where we go and somebody volunteers to go do, do a poop watch and try to, because, we recognize there's people with different abilities and stuff, so we could have a sign-up program, volunteers from our committee go and do that, if that's.
So I guess for next steps, definitely council sounds like they're up for considering it, that's for sure. I think staff may be reviewing kind of multiple options with this one. Despite how there is some benefits, I think the main motivation is to make this a reality with fundraising, and not to say that there's not other benefits to it, but I think that's what's really the root reason why you're before us today. So maybe there's some other options, and I know we looked before, but maybe there's even partners with private space that we've never thought of before that perhaps maybe we could even use. So I think looking at all options and coming back would be the best bet, and I don't want to delay it, but we could put that for the next regular council meeting, and then as well, it gives council some time to go down, that people that haven't, and look at the slope themselves based on these and get a real idea of exactly what that's talking about. 'Cause I'm guessing not everyone here has had the opportunity to go look at that slope, so.
It is, once it's staked out, it's much easier to visualize, like what a certain, however many meters are, like what it is. So I don't know if we knew when we're going, if we could stick it out or meet people there to kind of show them exactly what that looks like. That that distance.
Yeah, even staking it out for a week might be good. We
Yeah.
go down at our own
Stake it out.
leisure.
I mean, I could go throw stakes in it, I just don't know if that's
We did it for the
liability
wharf.
leaving stakes in it.
Just to see what it looked like, and
Yeah, just to give you
Pardon?
a sense of,
there's a lot of value in that for sure. And for the public to post it on your Facebook page so they can go down and take a look and,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
We'll have
I can
that
go,
set up.
I can go and throw stakes down there.
Because of the slope at the far end of the field, I think the two separate areas is probably best.
I would agree, but,
Stake it.
Stake it that way.
Level it to the two.
and I mean, I did put 150 feet long. If you found out at that, the last 30 feet is too short, we'd go 120 feet. Like, it doesn't have to be 150, obviously that's the goal, but if it was more realistic, and it is like you said, we've been doing this for a year, and dogs don't live as long as people, so our dogs' lives are gonna be half gone by the time this dog park gets built. So we'd rather have this built today than 5 years from now. So that's the big reason for the move. Yes, it's less money, but we also want this done. So that's why we're here.
Perfect. All right, that work for everyone? Just the essence of time. Okay, thank
All
you
right,
very much for the
thank you.
presentation. Appreciate it. All right, we are going to get into the approval of minutes from previous meeting. Is there any changes to any of the minutes that anyone picked up? Otherwise, I fly through them. That's why I always ask that first. Okay, I'm gonna fly through them because we still have a lot to cover. It's the minutes of the 23-07-04 public hearing objections to amendment Z 22-04 to the zoning bylaw Z 22-01 on Tuesday, July 4th, 2023 at 6:30 PM. Could I have a mover for those minutes? Councillor Neal, seconded by Councillor Hurdle. All in favor of adopting those minutes, please signify by saying aye. Those minutes have been adopted. The next one is the minutes of the 23-07-04 public hearing objections to amendment Z 22-05 to zoning bylaw Z 22-01, which is Tuesday, July 4th, 2023 at the 6:45 PM meeting. Once again, I'll be looking for a mover. I've got Deputy Mayor Akaji, seconded by Council Neal. All in favor of adopting those minutes, please signify by saying aye. And I meant to say adopting versus adapting. Minutes of the 23-07-04 regular council meeting on Tuesday, July 4th, 2023 at 6:50 PM. Could I have a mover for that one? I've got Councillor Heenan, seconded by Councillor Blanchard. All in favor of adopting those minutes, please signify by saying aye. I think that's all of them. Paper clips got it close. We are getting into communications, going over to staff report. Mr. Spear, it's over to you.
We're happy to be in light of the fact that we have such a long night. We want to just adopt them.
Council, you're over to you. Would you like it read, or would you? I do think there's some value in the public knowing some of the stuff that's happening. As much as I am cognizant of our time, I think not everyone sees the reports like we do, and there's some value to it. So,
Okay, thank you, Worship.
yeah.
Council, after a wet start to the summer, the weather has dried up and most of the outside activities were able to begin. There has been a noticeable increase in tourist traffic since mid-month, and staff are able to continue on outdoor projects. Thank you for the ongoing opportunity to present a summary of the staff reports to Council. Under Council, this fall could be tremendously busy for Council as you have many priorities to undertake over the next several months. One of the immediate ones is the annual budget process. The 3 new councillors have had minimal exposure to this process and will be brought up to speed, as well as given an opportunity to express their goals beforehand. With both a new ladder truck in the fire department and the upcoming wharf project immediately on the horizon, much of the capital has already been spoken for. However, we're still working with staff, the public, and council to determine any new initiatives that should be put forth for consideration. Anyone who has ideas or suggestions, please reach out to Paul or myself. Upon you again is a motion for the 2023 nuisance deer hunt for consideration. This is just one tool we have at our disposal in dealing with the large urban deer population. Another effective tool is assuring residents are not feeding the deer. This includes higher placement of bird feeders and, for the few apple trees around town, picking up the fallen fruit. Council appreciates the danger of deer ticks and the perceived rise in Lyme disease locally, but the matter is strictly controlled by the Department of Energy and Natural Resources Development. It has become a problem across many municipalities, large and small, as we battle this. Consultant Bill Higgs has brought forward his report concerning the courthouse, jail, and commons. After a 4-month consultation with several stakeholders, including through a survey and public presentation, his views reflect the overall view of the community and a model to move forward. His recommendation, based on the feedback, is to maintain the design and characteristics, but to upgrade the space to utilize it more as a cultural and event center by making some of the elements movable. Typically, a motion to accept indicates that council feels this is the direction they would like to go and for staff to build that into long-term plans. If you feel further debate is needed, feel free to table it for further discussion later. Before you tonight is the municipal annual report as required by legislation. It is an in-depth analysis of our budgets, financials, motions, council attendance, etc. After your acceptance, it'll be available online, and paper copies by request can be made available, just because it's so big. The Dunn Foundation continues to support the town of St. Andrews through generous grants. We typically aim for initiatives that were close to the heart of Lady Beaverbrook, including the arena, fire hall, and other recreational facilities. Before you are items identified by staff and would like to submit on your behalf and would like direction on submitting these. Administration. The exercise park is getting closer to completion and hopefully will be available for full use in 2 to 3 weeks. Although the park will be ready to go, the washrooms won't be available until next spring. We are working on signage and staff are discussing a grand opening in late August. I am happy to report that the additional funding for the wharf project has tentatively been approved. We are working with engineers for a public presentation August 28th, so preparations for design and construction can begin. Although the conceptual plans are completed, there is still a lot to discuss on timing, including construction duration, final design, and the phasing of the work. Staff is preparing an RFP for the operation of the canteen for 2023 to 2026, or longer if council desires. We will bring back the results for your review and consideration, but are able to release it this week if you are aligned with our thoughts. In addition to the budget process, staff are proposing to start their municipal plan and zoning bylaw updates in September, October as well. Led by the planners at the Service Commission, this process requires a tremendous amount of community input as well as council. In addition to adding the new communities of Bayside and Shamcook to the documentation, there's likely some tweaking of the existing documents that should take place as well, considering past experience and future housing initiatives. There's no hard deadline on this process like the budget, and so the timing is by the will of council. That said, there are tremendous advantages into getting this completed in a reasonable amount of time, such as by next summer. And not written in as we're supposed to have the planner, Alexander Gopin, present tonight, but we bumped him off to another presentation later in the month just because of the length of the agenda. So we'll have some initial planning of it later this month. As we're preparing for the tender for the trail upgrades for 2023, the Water Street portion has some challenges as the easement is quite narrow and very flat for stormwater purposes. Consequently, it needs to be rethought. Staff are proposing, and the committee agrees, to defer that portion until next year so the main trail by the subdivision can be finalized and put out to tender. We've gotten some complaints from residents about others using dumpsters, set up in hard-to-access areas in Bayside and Shamcook. They were put in as part of the solid waste contract, so residents have a spot to put their garbage where the hauler cannot access their road. Messes have been left there, and there are significant extra costs associated with the cleanup. We will reach out to the residents to discuss how to move forward. Services. With the improved weather and access to outdoor facilities, the recreation manager has had a busy summer with such things as Canada Day activities, the Sunshine Rollers at the arena, beach volleyball at Katie's Cove, and the Concert and Square series sponsored by the Business Improvement Association. The recreation manager also has changed offices and is now working out of a space at the arena. To talk to him in person, you should email him in advance or call Town Hall, and we will forward it to him to pass along a message. And his easier email, in case Henselpecker is a bit of a challenge, is just recreation@townofstandrews.ca, and that'll go directly to him. With the amount of rain that we had in June and July, there were concerns expressed by landowners along the lake about the level of the water. Staff went out and did a visual analysis of the levels along the shore and noted it is higher than usual but didn't appear to be at historic highs. We monitor the height of the water flowing out of the lake on a near-daily basis and have noticed a dramatic drop by a few inches in the last couple of weeks of July. We will continue to monitor the situation to reduce the risk of high waters impacting building structures along the lake. However, management of the water should still rest with the Environment Department of New Brunswick. We had a couple of falls along the old gangway on the eastern side of the wharf. The new gangway is much easier to maneuver with a smaller slope and superior railing. We've been continuing to encourage users to use the better access, and especially those with mobility issues or those who haven't acquired sea legs yet. We'd like to welcome Sandy Alfred to the team, who is working with both Recreation and the Youth Center in order to provide support to Mervyn and Debbie. This position has been in budget for many years, but we had trouble finding staff who would accept it. After following a normal recruitment process, Sandy was pleased to join the town to expand recreational opportunities. In conclusion, as we prepare to go through the budget process, it will likely be more complicated this year as it's the first council-driven one since local government's reform. We will be having public presentations, but for organizations who are seeking grants of $2,000 or more, or for new community-led initiatives, it's very important that you provide these requests by September 8th so they can be researched and debated by council staff, and we'll put out some public communications to get the word out. Looking forward to a busy fall to move the town forward. Respectfully submitted, Chris Spear, CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Council, any questions on anything in the staff reports or financial reports? Okay, looking for a motion to accept the staff report as presented. I've got Councillor Heenan and second by Councillor Hurdle. All in favor of accepting the staff reports, please signify by saying aye. That has been accepted. Thank you very much, Council. I am going to look in about 15 minutes' time. It'll be about 2 hours since we're in receipt, just to have a quick recess. So we'll get through as many as we can between now and then. So we're going to go to Finance and Administration. As we're in the introduction, consideration, and passing of bylaws and motions, we're going to Deputy Mayor Akaji for the first motion. You're on 102. It's all right.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. My first one is FA 230813, and it's the Town of St. Andrews 2022 Annual Report. As per the Local Governance Act, Section 105, all municipalities have to develop an annual report of council and financial statements of the town. This document has to be available for the public to access both online and at Town Hall. Provided with this report is a copy of the Town of St. Andrews 2022 Annual Report. The document highlights Introduction and Community Profile, Municipal Council of 2022, Review of Attendance of Councilors to Regular and Special Council Meetings, Review of Closed Session Meetings of Council, Grants issued by the Town of St. Andrews, Municipal Corporation Information and Municipal Salary Ranges, Audited Financial Statements from 2022, all motions of council from 2022, and this is the background. So the motion is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews accepts the Town of St. Andrews 2022 Annual Report, and I so move, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Seconder. Got Councillor Hurdle. Discussion on this one? Just want to I think, Mr. Nopper, you put this report together. It's pretty extensive.
It is very extensive.
So I want to thank you for that, and I also want to acknowledge when you get into the review of attendance of councilors, it's very impressive to see the overall attendance of councilors, so thank you for your dedication on that. Any other comments or questions? Okay, all in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Perfect, that has been carried. Next one.
Please note that I abstained from voting. I don't have enough background to.
Because you weren't here to see it, yeah.
Technically, I can
Okay.
speak on it.
So it's carried. One
Okay.
abstention. Here. Okay.
That moves us way ahead to page 172. That report was so long.
Yeah, it was so long. Just gotta find my page. I got it sent over too. Usually don't. Okay. One more. Okay. So the second one is FA 230816. And it's the Town of St. Andrews Appreciation Awards, Policy P-23-01. And the background is this. Each year, the Town of St. Andrews provides an opportunity for community members to be recognized through the Appreciation Awards. Over the last several years, we have had many nominations come forward, and it was recommended that a policy be developed to help streamline the process for these processes for the awards. Please see the attached policy for more detail. But here's the policy highlights. Types of awards, nominations, process and timelines, decision and notification process, and presentation of awards. Prior to the release of the applications, the staff are seeking approval of this policy. So the motion is this, that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews approves policy P-23-01, Town of St. Andrews Appreciation Awards. And I so move this, Your Worship.
Thank you. Once again, I'll be looking for a seconder. Councillor Harlan, discussion on this one. The big changes are that we're looking to give one per category would be the thing versus everybody that submits one. It just,
It's a good
you know,
thing.
and the other big change is there's a youth award as well, which I think is a nice addition.
Nice
to-
touch, yeah.
Yeah, so that would be, I think, Mr.
Very
Knopper's
nice.
idea, or Mr. Spears, which one? Mr. Spears, yeah.
Ah, very
Almost gave
nice.
credit to your, the right. But those are,
That one, Your Worship?
those are great suggestions for sure, and it is a good program. And it's just because over the years, I know I've been on council now for, how many years? Been 7, 8? Anyway, it all blends in. It's never been consistently applied, so to actually have a policy around it, it kind of makes a little bit of
That really
sense.
helps out.
You, I noticed your hand. Go ahead, Mr. Spear.
Yeah, sorry, Your Worship, just a couple of things. The staff were looking at it over the weekend. There's a couple of things we want to bring to your attention. Under 4.6, it says that once a nominee has received an award, they're ineligible for future recognition. Maybe you want to put a time like of 3 to 5 years, just as a consideration.
Sorry.
It's possible.
4.6.
4.6 means if you win it this year, you're never eligible again. And I'm just saying
That's not
maybe.
very fair.
Well, that's why I'm bringing it forward. And the only other thing is under selection that has the mayor and senior staff, which is what we thought, but if mayor and 2 councilors, it's whatever suits your fancy, to be honest. It's, we're happy to sit on it and help decide it, but it's whatever you'd like to do in these types of awards, if you'd like to.
I think those are good suggestions, especially if you're winning it in another category, because you've done so much. Like, there's volunteers that just spend hours and hours and hours. I'll pick one random, like Roger McNabb. Look at all the different things he's
That's
involved
right.
with, right? So, and sorry to a lot of people that do a lot. I just picked a random one. So I think your recommendation was 5 years, and the other recommendation was,
That the nomination committee be mayor and senior staff, would you rather have mayor and 2 councilors?
I'd rather add in two counselors as well, if that makes sense. Does everybody, okay, do you want a formal amendment on that? Probably should, for technicality. Okay, can I have a motion to amend with that? Counselor Hurdle, a seconder. Deputy Mayor Akaji, discussion on the amendment. All in favor of approving the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, that has been approved. So we go back. Is there any more discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving this policy, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That has been carried. Thank you, council. And
And the last.
the last one.
Last one is the background staff report about the Dunn Foundation.
Yes, we'll pass it over to Mr. Spear, I
Mr.
believe, on this
Spear.
one.
Thank you, Worship. So before you tonight, Council, is the Dunn Foundation has been a continuous supporter of the town of St. Andrews in various components. And so we asked staff, we usually bring recommendations to council for their blessing, if you will, or at least to say that these are good ideas. And so for what we were looking at this year, that we think would be good, was that one would be to replace the water fountain that's in the lobby of the arena. I think as Mr. Sharkey used to say, it's a 1968 original. So we'd like to get one that has the bottle filler on it. It's also got a chiller. And if you want to see it, it's the exact same one that's in the medical center, the truth be told, or no, right around the corner
Right
here.
around the corner.
So it's that one, just to bring it out here, to bring better quality water. The next thing we're looking at is an outdoor fountains. The two locations we're talking about, and we need your input on this, but one is to replace the granite one on the front street. I know that looks pretty, but the thing hasn't worked for several years. It doesn't drain properly, and it's kind of short. And then another one is maybe up by the exercise park. I will say, what I grabbed here is just a snippet of about 100 different designs, just to give you an idea of what's available. And so while this might be appropriate, it's stainless steel, for those that can't see it, I guess, we might be able to find something that blends better into Water Street. If you're okay with that, we might even look at moving the location on Water Street closer to Town Hall or something, instead of being front and center on the sidewalk there. So we'd like to replace that. And then I will say, looking at the prices, we're saying 7,000 each, but some of the nicer ones were up to 14. So there might be, if we get a really nice one at in front of Town Hall, it might only be one, just so you know, but we can maybe talk to the mayor and keep you informed on that once it gets closer. And the other was, as the fire department is also known as the Sir James Dunn Fire Department, that they need air packs. And there's probably better for the lieutenant to speak on this than I, but there's a new higher standard on these things that they're going to have to be phased in appropriately over the next few years. And I just got the quote in today from the chief. I said estimated at 15. I think it's actually closer to 17 for, I'm going to say, a 3-liter pack. I'm just trying to remember the email, whatever the case. Anyway, looking for him for help, but he's saying, drown, boy, drown. No. All I can see is squibble. Anyway, so that'd be something else to begin the process, and we could get that in, and we'll probably should look at over the next several years, putting in a couple of more. The ones we have are doable, but they have higher recommendations to replace them with a higher things. Not hypothetical, hopefully it would allow firefighters to stay in fires longer, where the conditions would allow, where they'd have to be running out to change out air bottles, is the thoughts. And like I said, it's the new standard for new ones. They don't even sell the smaller ones. That said, they aren't asking us to get, the fire marshals doesn't say to dispose of all the other ones right now, but as you start to replace, is to go up to the larger.
Perfect, yeah, I think that's the one that was talked about at the RSC as well, and
Yeah.
I talked to the chief, and I think we have about 5 that are gonna be outdated, and the short term, 9 are in pretty good shape, but, so having an active plan to keep changing
Replacing.
these are very important, so, so usually though, I note when we, give this to the Dunn Foundation, we usually give them kind of options, and this year it seems like this is what it is when you add it up. I was wondering if it made sense to put in the breathing apparatus and maybe the dog park and let them pick between the two. Because normally they get a choice, is what we normally do, and the dog park's obviously having a hard time getting there. And it gives the Dunn Foundation 2 community projects to consider versus 1, just a consideration, because I don't recall ever saying just 1. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Some years we had like 3. I remember the tennis court refurbishment and.
No, they'll support multiple, because some, they've supported like various repairs to the arena over the year too.
Yeah,
You know,
but usually we
depending-
give them like an option, right, where they
Yeah.
pick the ones that they want to do.
Yeah.
So council, for you, if that's something you want to entertain or not, to give them the choice between the two, because they do try to do the spirit of what Lady Beaverbrook would want, and the arena was always an important thing, obviously, so that seemed to get most of the priorities of the project. So over to you, what you prefer. Any thoughts?
So you're suggesting that instead of the breathing apparatus, we would suggest funding the dog park?
Well, you submit them all, and they can pick the projects they wish to support, right? Before, we always gave them options. This one feels a little bit more like, this is what we want you to do. I'm not saying, I don't know if that's a big deal or not. I just remember that's the way it's always been done in the past, where they pick the project that they want.
But it's, to me, it's a higher priority that our firemen have the apparatus than having the dog park, but that's just me.
Agree, I'm talking more the fountains and stuff like that, so they can pick, yeah. Or we could just submit as is. Over to you, council. Okay, I'm not really, Councillor Ware?
Well, I think they've picked three excellent projects, and I perhaps I'm biased, but I just can't see the dog park being up there with any one of those three projects.
All right, so what I'm not getting any, so we'll just submit this list. Does that work? Just consensus, everyone good with the list? All right,
Okay.
we're good? Easy enough.
Thank you.
I note that it is 8:28, and the next one will be a lengthy conversation, so we're looking for a motion for a 5-minute recess, just so Deputy Mayor Akaji, seconded by Councillor Heenan. All in favor of recess? Any opposed? We're in recess. Could I have a motion to come out of recess? I got Deputy Mayor Akaji, seconded by Councillor Bennett. All in favor of coming out of recess? Okay, we are out of recess. So we are now into Public Works, but Councillor Blanchard spared of motions. It is a discussion on the Sayers Market Wharf and Market Square update. I will pass it briefly over to Mr. Spear. We do have a meeting upcoming that we're going to be discussing it. So basically in our packages, I guess separately, we got very detailed, basically background of since the whole conversation started and the reports around it. Now, keep in mind some of those reports, the figures are severely outdated, but it gives a little bit of a history of where we got to. I guess maybe the best thing would be, Council, we are going to dive into this deeper. I don't think staff's looking for any type of consensus today. Did we want to dive into it today, or do we want to do it part of a bigger conversation like a workshop? Because to me, it's a huge, huge thing, and I don't want to just skim over it briefly. I think it deserves a meeting on its own, to be quite candid. Mr. Spear?
Yeah, and to remind you, Council, we'll have the engineers down, I think it's the 28th of August, and it'll give you more time, because I do know, to let people at home know, I think it was about 300 pages that I gave to you folks of diagrams and background reports and stuff, and during the long weekend, so you're welcome. But anyway, it's just to give everyone, to remind us how we got where we are today. But I'd encourage you to go through. If you have questions up front, feel free to drop in. It's been Paul's and my life for a few years now. But it'd be a good time to really approach the engineer at that date. And then the plan is to be a public meeting, not a in-council meeting, so the community can hear what's before you too.
Yeah, so with that being said, though, it is in the agenda. I want to make sure there was any questions from council they wanted to give to staff now. Otherwise, we will spend a significant amount of time. There's multiple options, obviously, within the report that can be revisited. The public should be revisited. We have a new residents that essentially are now going to be on the hook for this debt, so they deserve to be engaged in it as well. So more to come, but I didn't want to just skim over it if anyone had any pressing questions. Okay.
And for the public, if you missed it in my report, we did get a significant increase that to try to finish this report. Hopefully it hasn't gone up again, but anyway, it's to try to really move forward with that.
I think that's the important for messaging. I've got a number of emails over the last couple months saying, you know, you guys have been talking about this and girls for a couple of years. What's going on? Well, what happened in the process is as we went through the engagement that was required as part of it, and the waiting is like everything, the price went through the roof so significantly that the municipality was going to be on the hook for additional almost $2 million, wasn't it? So we had to go back to get the extra funding so the other levels of government pay their percentage of that increase, and that's what the delay has been. And tentatively, it looks like we were successful in achieving that, saving a significant amount of money. But yeah, that's the Coles notes of why it's taking so long. But there is some sensitivities and decisions this council is going to have to make. There is a building that has been down there for a number of years. It was the Island, we'll call it the Island Quest building. The discussion on how that's moved with the Market Square refurbishment, what that looks like, where it gets put back, all that has to be officially decided by this council. But there's a lot more decisions that need to be made, including which of the options we truly want to go with. Originally, Armor Stone was suggested. The community came back to us and said absolutely not. Council backed away from that, looked at other options. There's concrete, there's wood, there's all sorts of different options. So those all have to be weighed out now, knowing now that we have enough financial resources to actually go ahead. But yeah, and myself as I'd even like to talk about what happens when the end of the wharf needs replaced with the inflation. Are we actually, as a community, able to continually sustain this wharf? And I'm not saying we're backing away from it, but like we need to come up with a long-term plan. So, you know, and I know it's 25 years from now, probably, hopefully, and it's not this council, but we got to make sure that that asset is something that we can afford. And yeah, there's more to come on that. All right, so we'll go on to the next one. We'll go to public safety, and this is Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is PS 230811, and the subject is the request for permission to Minister of Natural Resources and Energy Development for the 2023 nuisance deer hunt. The background reads, as part of the process for the nuisance deer hunt, Town of St. Andrews must formally request permission to host the hunt from the Minister of Natural Resources and Energy Development. The goal of the program, in partnership with DNRED, is to lower the number of deer in a safe manner within the urban limits of the town. Hunting can only occur with the use of bow and must be on a property with 1 acre or greater of space. The number of available permits will be determined by DNRED. A few facts on the deer hunt. It allows private landowners within the urban town limits to receive special permits authorizing hunters to harvest antlerless deer on their property. Hunters and landowners can register with the town between September 1st and October 31st, and the hunt takes place between October and November. So in 2022, I noticed that these stats were blank. Did we actually have the stats for them, or?
We do not. The person who we usually deal with retired last year, and I don't know if the other person's on vacation, but we contacted them over a week ago and never heard back on what
Okay.
those numbers are, so we will follow up and hopefully hear back in the next few
Typically
weeks.
between 30 and 40 deer pretty
Yeah.
consistently. If anything, I think it's probably declined because there was
Yeah.
a number of properties that were acquired by people that didn't exercise it. So I would, if I had to guess, and that's just what this is, I'd say it was probably closer to 30.
Fair enough. So the motion reads that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews moves to request permission from the Provincial Minister of Natural Resources and Energy Development for approval of the 2023 nuisance deer hunt within the Town of St. Andrews. And I so move.
Can I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Bennett. Open up the discussion, but I do have something I wanted to say first is, so when I look, I know it says urban in the background, but the motion is actually the Town of St. Andrews. And I've talked to some residents that live in Shamcook Bayside, one of which is a farmer, and they've been bothering him for years. So the question is, can Shamcook Bayside, if DNR approves their property, can they participate in this program? We are one community, so, yeah. So I guess
would
we
hope
just
they'd be
submit it
included.
for our entire new community, and they can come back to us and tell us otherwise. Would that be safe to assume? Because I do have a number of residents that are inquiring, and there is some just on the outskirts of town that could certainly come into play as well, right?
They have the large-sized property.
Yeah. So I think we'll go under the assumption that the Town of St. Andrews is in fact the Town of St. Andrews, since we are a new community, if that works for everybody. Okay,
Absolutely.
all right. Any other discussion? Councillor Hurdle?
Thank you, Worship. Are there any stipulations around where the dressing of the animal is permitted to take place? Is it on site, or should they be removing the animal to their home to dress it?
That would be an agreement typically with the landowner. It's very typically you see them do it there, and then they clean it. If you move an animal that's not dressed, there's things that you can do to the animal to actually ruin the meat. Typically it's done on site, but again, if it's your land and you're allowing it to be, you can make your own rules, right? So, yeah, that's a good question.
Thank you.
For the record, skinning usually takes off-site. You have to take it to DNR first with the hide on, then you take it back. So that's usually done probably in someone's garage or their own property. Deputy Mayor?
Have they settled the issue about the meat? What happens to the meat?
The meat is still consistent. You're thinking of the nuisance deer program. That has not been decided. This is just the straight-up
Okay, it's
annual
the
hunt
straight-
where
okay.
it would be 2 antlerless deer per hunter.
For Hunter, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That's been carried. Okay, we are on to the next one.
Next one is PS 230810, and the subject is the amendment to bylaw number 18-01, a bylaw to regulate vehicular traffic in the Town of St. Andrews for an accessible timed parking space. The background reads, the town of St. Andrews has received numerous requests from the public over the summer period to have one of the accessible parking spots besides Cockburn's Guardian Pharmacy on King Street to be a timed parking spot. On many occasions, the accessible parking spaces have been used all day throughout the town and have created access issues for residents trying to get their prescriptions or to make quick stops in the downtown. It is recommended that one of the accessible parking spots on King Street be converted to a 45-minute parking space. This will ensure that one parking spot remains open for residents with accessible issues to access key locations in the downtown or to make quick errands. The amendment would occur to Schedule G of the bylaw and only needs one reading of council. So the motion reads that the council of the town of St. Andrews amends bylaw number 18-01, a bylaw to regulate vehicular traffic in the town of St. Andrews, Schedule G, to make one accessible parking space on King Street beside the drugstore building to be a 45-minute parking space, and I so move, your worship.
Seconder for that one, Deputy Mayor Akergy won that race, Councillor Heenan. Discussion? Okay, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, I think this is a great idea, and I'm glad you went with 45 minutes instead of 30, because some of us old people can't move in 30 minutes.
I will say that the ones by the hardware store are certainly appreciated. I can tell you, even on a busy Saturday, when I pull up if I need something at the hardware store, they are quite often open. It's actually pretty surprisingly. So it is definitely good, and I think it's something we should continue to look at as we want our downtown to be more shoppable for both visitors but locals alike. Any other discussion? Councillor Hurdle.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just because the parking in that area has been a subject of complicated discussions in the past, in terms of enforcement, are we just looking at chalking? How would we enforce?
Before you is a question about bylaw enforcement officer that we're going into closed session for later, so we can discuss it at that point.
So I heard TBD. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor of approving that 45-minute parking spot, please signify by saying aye. Aye. That is approved. Thank you, council. And that is it. And the next one is where I go to the washroom break again.
So we're moving on with business, tourism, heritage, and culture, and it's Councillor Hurdle. And your first one, the mayor has excused him from, is the St. Andrews Brewing Company Oktoberfest Market Square request.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. It is my privilege to bring forward a good time. And this is in reference to BTHC 230805, and the subject is St. Andrews Brewing Company Oktoberfest Market Square request. And the background is that the St. Andrews Brewing Company is looking to host its second annual Oktoberfest celebrations on Saturday, September the 23rd, 2023, in Market Square from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Please see attached letter for further details. They are requesting the use of Market Square for the following: to set up a tent and use of Market Square from Friday, September 22nd to Sunday, September the 24th, to extend their liquor license to this area, to be allowed a food truck on site to serve traditional German food, extension of noise bylaw until 10:30 p.m. Note, as an outdoor event, they need permission to extend. Permission to use town hall washrooms as supplement. Permission to post an Oktoberfest banner on Reed Avenue. If approved, the request also includes any use of picnic tables not in use by the town, extra garbage cans, use of Market Square stage, use of any electrical if needed, any available portable fencing as well. Note, staff have met with representatives of the brewing company and support their request to council for the use of Market Square for this event. So the motion before us is that the council of the town of St. Andrews approves the use of Market Square and associated requests from Friday, September 22nd to Sunday, September 24th, 2023 for the second annual Oktoberfest celebrations by the St. Andrews Brewing Company, and I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Hurdle. I need a seconder. Councillor Harland. So is there any more discussion on this, council? Yes, Councillor Blanchard?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. As the councillor that outlasted Councillor Neal last year at the Stein holding contest, I'd like to say that I'm fully supportive of this motion. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor Blanchard, but I think Councillor Neal's up for a challenge. Any other discussion? Oh, Counselor Neal.
I'll start off by pointing out that he did eventually lose to my older sister. But no, with all due respect, I think I was able to take some of this in last year, and it was a great event. It seemed to be very well received by everybody, well attended. So yeah, I'd be in full support of this as well.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Neal, and that's wonderful to hear that a woman beat him. Yes. Any other discussion? Okay, there being no further discussion, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, say aye. Contrary minded? None. So it's carried unanimously. And could someone go and get the mayor, please?
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I was watching online, and I can confer that Councillor Blanchard easily beat Councillor Neal at that competition, but again, his older sister easily beat Councillor Blanchard. All right. We are moving on to the next one, which, another motion for Councillor Hurdle.
Thank you, Your Worship. And this is in reference to BTHC 230808. And the subject is the Charlotte County Courthouse Sustainable Reuse Engagement Process Report. We're privileged enough to have the report delivered to us earlier in this meeting as well. And the background is at the March 6th, 2023 regular council meeting, it was agreed upon to hire Bill Hicks of Broken Shovel Consulting to conduct a visioning exercise for the Charlotte County Courthouse. Since then, Mr. Hicks has developed a report for council that was presented this evening. The process for review included document review, public engagement survey and open house, review meetings with senior staff, interviews with local organizations, businesses, and key stakeholders, development of scenarios for reuse of courthouse for council consideration. Council should make a motion to accept the report and then can use this report for further considerations at budget on the next steps. And the action before us, or the motion, is that Council of the Town of St. Andrews accepts the Charlotte County Courthouse Sustainable Reuse Engagement Process Report completed by Bill Hicks of Broken Shovel Consulting.
Perfect. Can I have a mover for that motion? I've got Councillor Harlan, seconded by. Did you move?
I did not.
Pardon?
I did not move it.
He did not move. No, he yeah. Just because you read it doesn't mean you always move. Councillor Harlan, seconder. Councillor Neal. So I think it's more on the table. Maybe I'll go back to Councillor Hurley. I think you mentioned maybe a motion to.
Yeah, I'd like to motion to table for the time being, and I think as we have the Heritage Committee assembled, this would be a good first or early project for them to take a look at and perhaps consider and bring back their thoughts, as this does pertain specifically to the Heritage Committee, what their mandate is.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Ware. I'm having a hard time tonight.
Well, I agree 100% with tabling it. I was going to suggest that maybe we acknowledge receipt of it as opposed to accept it, for the simple reason I don't like using the word accept. I think there is a lot of thought to go into it yet, and I think most councillors have questions about it, so I'll support Councillor Hurdle on that.
Sounds like a seconder. So we got a mover and a seconder on tabling. Any other discussion on tabling? Councillor Hurdle.
Sorry, I know it's a little unorthodox. I should have included this with my initial thing. I did want to just take a moment and thank Bill Hicks for a tremendous amount of work that he put into doing this. And again, consultation, visioning exercises, talking to people. A lot of what he did was went behind the scenes that we didn't necessarily see. And I know that he came forward with a lot of really, really impactful, important information. But in terms of the report itself, I just don't think it's necessarily what we're looking for, but I'd like to get this over to the Heritage Committee first to get their 2 cents on.
Perfect. Anyone else is on the table? We'll go Councillor Harlan and Councillor Heenan.
I agree with tabling. I think it's, and I also agree that the Heritage Committee needs to have an opportunity to have eyes on. But I also believe that this is a tremendous opportunity for the town of St. Andrews to look at ways of enhancing our cultural heritage tourism. I think if you look worldwide, that industry is growing significantly, and I think that we could be packaging, promoting, structuring ourselves differently as a town. And I really look forward to the Heritage Committee and what they may have to, some direction, thought that they may have to provide us with in the future.
Perfect. Councillor Heenan.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I am so in agreement with tabling this. I see too many taxation implications to accept this report budgetary. I understand that the citizens of St. Andrews have spoken. However, I'm not comfortable in using this as a budgetary blueprint for going on with the courthouse. I'm sorry. I strongly know what the courthouse is about, and I strongly agree that it's part of our heritage, but I also believe that we have to be fiscally management. We have to be monetary and fiscally responsible. And I think we have to do something else, and maybe the Heritage Program can provide that, or the Heritage Committee. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Akaji.
I agree with tabling it. I think the Heritage Committee needs to have their voice into this. I also think we need to find someone who's got a little more energy and wants to take it on as a challenge, because it would be a wonderful project if there was a young enough finance people that would want to challenge it. And I think it could be, as you say, Councillor Harlan, used in cultural ways that we have not yet explored. Thank you very much.
Councillor Harlan, you want to add something?
So my only concern is the time frame, because as the courthouse continues to sit, it still is a white elephant to us, and it still is costing the town and the town's people money. So that would be my only concern, is hopefully as the Tourism Committee gets its feet under it, the Heritage Committee, sorry, the Heritage Committee gets its feet under it, that this could be identified as a priority in taking a look at it, because it sits and it's still going to need to be painted and roofed and heated and all of that, without us having still any direction or potentially receiving any revenue from it. So that's my only concern.
Agreed. And I think either way, though, the good news is we really can't do much with it till budget time, because the report indicates of hiring of a new staff member. It would cost money to take those rails and make them portable. It would be a significant investment that would have to be debated at budget time. So that's really almost our shot clock, because otherwise we'll be sitting on it for maybe another year. So, but very, very valid point. Anyone else? Otherwise, it seems like everyone's okay with tabling, right? So, okay, all in favor of tabling, please signify by saying aye. Okay, that has been tabled, and we'll revisit that another time after the Heritage Committee's had an opportunity to weigh in on it as well. And maybe there's some good ideas around that table as well for sustainability or repurposement while respecting the heritage of it. The next one is a discussion on e-bike and e-scooter, the business partnership opportunity. I think Mr. Spear or Mr. Knopper, which one? Mr. Knopper, over to you.
Thank you, Council. So we were approached by a company, by Kurt McCarthy of Zip Electric Inc., to look at bringing e-bikes and e-scooters to our community. We met with him as staff to review options. He's looking to actually invest the capital expense to actually purchase the units to bring them in here. It is something that Eastern Charlotte Waterway has actually approached us as well, so we've actually put them both in contact with each other to potentially look at a partnership opportunity where they could work together. But as the town, we looked at it from a couple of standpoints of where, could be the best uses of these. The W.C. O'Neill Arena by the Welcome Center, Town Hall, and Indian Point Park by the Outdoor Exercise Park are three options that he's willing to sort of work with to start, looking at upwards of potentially 30 bikes and e-scooters. These are all, so the neat thing with these bikes is they're all app-based and geo-located and geo-fenced, so if they go outside a particular area, they stop working. they can be regulated by speeds. So if what they're looking at is a 32 kilometer an hour unit that could go through the community, those speeds can be reduced to 20 kilometers. So it really comes down to the comfort of council and what you guys would like to see as uses. As you can see in the report, they're looking at units of 8 docking stations, 6 docking stations, approximate space of, largest 12 foot by 4 foot of space. Now, these would need some power requirements to be linked up because they do run on an app-based and a credit card-based system. So it's not like anybody can just take them and go. You actually have to, like similar to you see in other communities and other cities, you basically have a credit card on file and people can rent them and bring them back, and that would be the portion. As the town, what they're asking for is space and land and willing to share in some profit revenue with that. On their end is capital investment in the units as well as maintenance, upkeep, and tracking to make sure the units go back to their location. So staff support within that would be very minimal to none. So it is an option we would like to present to council, and the one situation is that we've looked, there's very few businesses in New Brunswick that actually offer these services, so trying to put it out to a request for proposal or a tendering process might be difficult to actually achieve another business coming in or multiple bids, so we're looking for council's opinion as to allowing for a pilot project sort of sole sourcing with this particular individual and or partnership with Eastern Charlotte Waterways within it. So
thank you.
Back to you, council.
Thank you very much. In a community that has relatively minimal ways of public transportation, I do think it's an interesting proposal. A quick question. So it has to be returned to the docking station in order to get your credit card. It can't be just, how some of them are just you leave it where you are and then you basically have a time period where it runs and you can park it. It has to go back to the docking station, correct?
That we discussed that with the proponent, and the agreement would be is that the returnee would have to return it to one of the docking stations, or their credit card continues to be billed.
And question on that: when it's returned to the docking station, is it then locked in the dock station? I'm just thinking somebody picking it up and throwing it off the end of the wharf, and I know that but it's not that crazy of a concept, to be completely honest with you. But does it lock into these units, or?
From our understanding, we'd have to look at the specific units that they've proposed, but to my understanding that there should be some locking mechanism with them that they just can't be pulled off. Like I believe you need to put your credit card in, select the unit that you're taking, and then it would release.
Perfect.
We'll follow up and make sure we get that.
And then my just last question, I'll pass it over to council because I'm asking a few. So obviously it goes without saying that insurance would be required for them, everything like that. But my question on that is, though, if one goes off the end of the wharf, for a bad example, we have no liability. That is on the business owner, would be the assumption. We are not charged for repairs. We're not charged for damages. We're not for theft, even though I'm sure they're GPS.
The business owner is proposing to assume all liability for these things.
Okay, council, I asked him my fair share. Council Hurdle.
Thank you, Worship. I mean, in theory, this seems like a really great thing. I'm all for active different modes of transportation. I do have a lot of questions about it just in terms of its core purpose, because this wouldn't be necessarily for grocery store trips or doing it. It really would principally just be for fun, because you'd have to walk or bicycle or drive to the docking station, use it to go somewhere that you would have covered that distance to walk in the first place. Like if you're walking downtown, or if you're walking to the docking station to get the bike to go downtown, it's probably the same effort. So I'm just trying to visualize how it would be used in the town. And you probably don't have the answer for these questions either, but I don't really know how that would play out.
It's primarily recreational, there's no doubt about it. The reason we chose the arena was to tie into Project Village Share and their electric cars.
Right.
They said a lot of their people were saying they were coming here, leaving their cars to charge, and then staring, waiting for that to go through. So there's an opportunity, and even for people that maybe own charging or cars that need to be charged, electric cars, they can come here and charge it, then use this to visit the town, and then come back in a few hours if they don't have the quick charge.
That's exactly the answer I was looking for, but yeah, go ahead.
I'll tie into that as well, Your Worship. So number of comments that we've actually received, and I should have been tracking them. We've definitely received over 15 requests in the last month alone at Town Hall for a bike rental space or some sort of, transportation, mobile transportation or active transportation use. And we've basically told people there's no rental in the community. So this would provide another option for, again, to the point of more recreational use. But I've seen in driving through some other communities where people actually have a backpack full of groceries and they're using this to get to their location. So it is something we've also discussed about how, if this is a successful program, are they willing to expand? And if so, would these be, could locations where multiple residences are being built, would that be an option to talk with those private landowners to see if they would want a station to help create more transportation in the community?
So just a couple follow-up questions, if you don't mind, because you said you've seen it in use in other communities. Is ZIP successfully actually active in other communities similar to St. Andrews, and can they share statistics around utilization with us?
So ZIP is a newer business, so they're looking at us to be one of their main pilots.
Yeah.
So that's, but I have seen in Halifax and some of the very larger cities, like in Ottawa, I saw it last year alone, where it was the model where people would just drop on a corner and somebody else literally was there within 10 minutes picking it up. So there are different models out there. They're just mainly in the larger cities. We just haven't seen a company basically be really interested in coming here. But I think with the potential of the tourism market, and they're really looking at it as a seasonality from spring till fall, it's sort of really trying to tailor into the tourism and operation.
And last, do we have a picture of what they look like?
Of the bikes?
Yeah.
I thought I had one in there.
Sure. Thanks.
Thanks. Councillor Harlan?
I was just going to say exactly what you did, Paul, in terms of, I see it as a tremendous opportunity to enhance our offerings to tourists in particular. I'm aware of the one in Halifax, the downtown. In the downtown core, it's utilized all of the time. In fact, I think now they've had to implement a booking system because you just can't go and be sure that there's one there available. So I really think when you think of the number of tourists who come and who may want to access our trail system, walking or biking is another opportunity for them to access our trail system. So I really think it's something that we can promote within this town as part of our tourist offering. I think it's great.
Thank you. I got Deputy Mayor, and then I'll go to Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. The Algonquin Hotel, do they not rent their bicycles to the town or just to their clientele? Just a question.
Through Your Worship, the Algonquin Hotel rents their green bikes to their renters only. So they're not available for general public rental. So it is really, and it only occurs between July and August. So you'll actually see them disappear in September.
That's right. The other thing is, I think this is great with the e-bikes because they can tour to Minister's Island on them, right? So we just have to put in a station. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Councillor Bennett?
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to comment on about possible locations, like looking at the hotel and looking at other large venues like the campground. And with the number of people that jump in their cars to go downtown, this could help alleviate traffic congestion downtown if people choose to take the e-bikes from a major location into the downtown core and then go back. It's a whole lot easier to park a bike than it is a bunch of cars.
Absolutely.
Through you, Your Worship, we've actually pointed them in the direction of the Algonquin, and one of the areas by the exercise park would be closer to the campground. They really want to try with a pilot of 3 to start, but we said work with these businesses as well, so there could be potential that this does grow quickly if private corporations jump in as well.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Heenan?
Your Worship, I agree with Councillor Bennett that I think that the locations more out of the town is better, so it alleviates a lot of traffic. I would even go so far as to say if they had a docking station this close into Shamcook, that people, if we had a, could pull a pie from the sky, if we had that, we could have a spot for people to park and be able to come into town without bringing their vehicle into town. Like come in for the afternoon or whatever. Like I really see it as a alternative spots outside of the town center. That would just be my comment. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
And we do have NBCC that has the capability of the electronic bicycles, to plug them in. So, and there's plenty of parking to park your car and go on your bicycle.
Thank you. Councillor Hurdle?
With just as a consideration, with all the developments that are happening around Acres Landing and the development beside it as well, there's a lot of residents there that could utilize it. So a station in that area might make a lot of sense.
That's a really good point. Okay, anyone else? Okay, It sounds like council loves the idea, wants to hear more, so I'd say continue to explore. I think the real thing is there's a little bit of a question around, should we go to RFP? To me, it's a pilot project. No one is knocking on our door to come with a business idea. I don't see why we'd go to RFP when a business has been creative and reached out to the community to try to find a solution for us, but I'd just like to get consensus on that. Everyone fine with the process that staff's following? I am. Okay, thank you very much. That will wrap that one up unless staff has anything else on that one, or all good? Thank you very much. Playing the role of Councillor Gumashall tonight. Councillor Weir, would you like to do this one since it's about the Bayside Community Hall? You can be the leading actor today. Just need to have a bicycle helmet on. Sorry, I threw you under the bus there.
Okay, RCS 230811, Bayside Hall Committee, recommendations for appointment. At the July 4th, 2023 regular council meeting, council established terms of reference for the Bayside Hall Committee. Town of St. Andrews is recommending in the motion provided the names and members and the terms of office to be served. Terms have been staggered to ensure continuity on the committee. The motion reads that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews appoints the following members to the Bayside Hall Committee: Gary James, 3-year term; Tom Beckerton, 2-year term; Darrell Weir, 3-year term; Mary Bartlett, 3-year term; Cecil Greenlaw, 2-year term; Marguerite Garnett, 2-year term; Brenda Hooper Rowland, 2-year term; and Mervyn Hanselpecker, Manager of Recreation, as ex officio. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Weir. Seconder for that one. Got Councillor Blanchard. Discussion this one. I just have one quick question. Councillor Weir, does this all work for you?
Pardon me?
Does this work for you? Is this something that you feel would be good for the Bayside Community Hall, the group that's in it, the terms, everything? Are you comfortable with this motion?
Yes, very comfortable. We've, the ones that have been around for years have discussed it in detail. Mervyn is doing an excellent job. He occasionally calls on Friday night, or, well, he doesn't call then, he calls a day ahead of time and says, somebody open for me on Friday night, or close on, or open early Saturday morning. But he's doing a good job of even doing that on the weekends. And of course, it's at the end of my driveway, so usually Gary or I, go down, so.
Sounds good.
And some of the members are not going to be overly active. They're just there because they've always been there, and they want to keep involved. But there's 3 or 4 of us that will help Mervyn. Mervyn doesn't need a lot of help.
Perfect. Sounds good. I'm really glad to hear that you're comfortable with the committee structure, since obviously you're in that area, but you also have the history behind it. So any other questions on this one? Okay, all in favor of approving this, please signify by saying aye. And once again, that is unanimously approved. Okay, we are
Your
on
Worship,
to plan. Oh,
prior to going forward, you have been in 2.5 hours. This is the first time
thank you. Is it-
This is the first time I've had to do this. So, council, would you like to continue moving forward with the agenda? If you do not, then the meeting will have to be postponed and moved to another time within approximately 5 days.
yeah, it'll probably be in all reality next Monday. Okay, all in favor of continuing for another hour? Just a quick show of hands. Okay, I've got consensus. We're going to keep going if that works for you. I don't know if I need a more formal motion than that. Okay, Planning and Economic Development, Councillor Heenan.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council.
Oh, sorry. I forgot
I'm
about
sorry.
that. Thank you, Councillor Ware. We're good.
Okay, thank you, Worship and Council. PED 230510, Amendment Bylaw Number .09BS009/01, a bylaw to amend Bayside Planning Area Rural Regulations for second and third reading. Council has been moving through the processes for amendment of bylaw number 09BS00901, a bylaw to amend Bayside Planning Area Rural Regulations for 09BS00900. The staff-driven amendment is to rezone PIDS 1520335 150705758 and 01235290 from Industrial Park I zone to Rural RU zone. The following steps have been taken. Public presentation was held on May 15, 2023. Public hearing of objections June 19, 2023. Views of the Planning Advisory Committee June 21, 2023. First reading July 4, 2023. Council can move to second and third readings of this bylaw amendment. The motion, Your Worship, is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews grants leave for the second reading to amendment bylaw number 09BS00901, a bylaw to amend Bayside Planning Area Rural Plan Regulation number 09BS009-00. I so move.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder? I've got Councillor Harland. Discussion on this one? Okay, all in favor of going to second reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye, Your Worship.
Perfect. This is bylaw number 09BS00901. It's a bylaw to amend Bayside Planning Area Rural Plan
Your
Regulation.
Worship, just so you know, you only have to read it by title. You read it
Okay,
in full.
Number 09BS00900, and I can stop right there. That's perfect. This was
Okay.
read the second time, the 8th day of August 2023. Next motion, which looks very similar.
Thank you, Your Worship. That the Council of the Town of St. Andrews grants leave for the third and final reading to amendment bylaw number 09BS009-01, a bylaw to amend Bayside Planning Area Rural Plan Regulation number 09BS00900. I once again so move.
And once again, I'll be looking for a second. Councillor Bennett, discussion on this one. Not probably seeing any. All in favor of going to third reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye, Your Worship.
Perfect. This is once again bylaw number 09BS00901. It is a bylaw to amend Bayside Planning Area Rural Plan Regulation number 09BS00900. It was read the first time the 4th day of July 2023, read the second time the 8th day of August 2023, and read the final and third time on August 8th, 2023. We'll let Councillor Ware return.
Your Worship, just for the next motion, if you do go to the next reading, read by title, and we'll ensure that it is posted appropriately, so you only have to read it by title 3 times.
That would be fantastic. People love my reading, but we'll skip it for tonight. It's a long enough meeting.
Are we ready? I'm good? Okay, Your Worship and Council. PED 230510, Amendment Z22-05 to the zoning bylaw Z22-01 for PID 013235591, Dominique Belanger and Mika Van de Capia, first reading. At the June 5th, 2023 regular council meeting was presented with amendment bylaw number Z22-05. A bylaw to amend bylaw number Z22-01, being the zoning bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. The purpose of this amendment is to rezone PID 013235591 at 126 and 134 Reed Avenue for Dominique Belanger and Michaela Van de Capria from service residential to multiple service 1 MR1 for the purpose for developing a rooming house. The following steps have been taken. Public presentation, June the 5th, 2023. Obtain the views of the Planning Advisory Committee, June 21st, 2023. Public hearing of objections, August the 8th, 2023, which was this evening. The Planning Advisory Committee had no issues with the rezoning and suggested that all parking should be located at the rear of the property to keep with street continuity. If Council is comfortable with the comments received from the public hearing of objections of August the 8th, 2023, Council can proceed with the first reading. And the action is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews grants leave for the first reading to amendment bylaw number Z22-05, a bylaw to amend bylaw number 22-01, being the zoning bylaw for the Town of St. Andrews for PID 013-23591 at 126 and 134 Reed Avenue for Dominique Belanger and Michael Izilia Van de Capilla to move from service residential zone to multiple residential MR1 zone for the purpose of a rooming house, and I so move.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder? I've got Councillor Harland. Discussion on this one? Councillor Spear. Mr. Spear.
Your worship, sorry, just I noticed in the last line, it said that the PAC advised going to parking in the rear of the building, but I don't think that was built into the bylaw, so it'd have to be an amendment. I don't know if we should do it at this level or wait till, we could do it at second reading, but so no one forgets about it, but you might want to add it as an amendment for a term and condition if council agrees, or you can discuss it in a month's time.
Okay, just my follow-up question on that then would be, I was actually hoping, since there was no objection to this, of going to second and third reading to bring this back at the pace because of the delay we had in the posting. Is there any Xander's question, is there any concern about making that change and doing second and third reading in the same meeting? Because I don't want to delay this process. I see Xander's hand, I'll go over to him. Mr. Gopin?
Yeah, so the parking in the rear, it wouldn't have to be an amendment to the bylaw. It could just be a resolution that council adds, and you could do that at third reading, so it doesn't have to impact the process at all.
Okay, perfect. So we'll just add that in for the second reading. And council, I don't know about you, but I think we should do second and third reading on this one. There was
Yes.
no objections and it was delayed the process.
Yes.
Everyone, I'm seeing consensus that we'd like to do second and third reading the next meeting. And I know you're gonna post it, so I don't have to read the whole thing, so that doesn't delay it either though, right? Because it's only a 2.5 page document. Okay, so any other discussion? All in favor of going to first reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That is everybody. Here we go. This is bylaw number Z22-05, a bylaw to amend bylaws number Z22-01, being the zoning bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. And I think I'm good right there, am I? Perfect. It read the first time, the 8th day of August of 2023. We are now going into a discussion on the process for the update of planning bylaws, PD 230815, which Mr. Spear did hint at in his staff report. So I don't know if Mr. Gopin or Mr. Spear wants to discuss this one, but it's kind of a timeline of our plan of attack. We know that these are long processes, but it gives us a little bit of a chart of when we're going to handle them. Over to you, Mr. It says Mr. Knopper. Is this Mr. Knopper or Mr. Spear? Potato. You pick.
Thank you, worship. I guess to remind, we are planning on having a meeting the 30th to go over this more precisely. But it's just to update the plan for the bylaws, and maybe it'd be best for Xander to give the short version of what was supposed to be his presentation tonight, if he's able, if he's still awake, and just to sort of give you a heads up of what's coming up in a few weeks.
Perfect. Short and sweet. Anyone else? All good?
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Let's see.
It's a bit of a delay.
Yeah, I'll be very quick because we'll be coming back talking more, and also some people delayed here. Basically, the goal is to get through the process in a year. Start off with a background study, which is required, and then we move into public consultation, some general open houses, key stakeholder interviews, working both in the former local service districts and kind of focusing on those areas. But as Mr. Spear said, there are some tweaks probably to the Old Town. So consulting there as well. There will be virtual opportunities as well. There will be a lot of public consultation. And from there, kind of at the tail end of that, we'll start moving into actually drafting bylaws. And this would be all the planning bylaws. So we're talking municipal plan, zoning bylaw, subdivision bylaw. I think that covers it. Obviously, I'll go into more details about what the current plans are now and how they work and the different kind of layers. But basically, within a year, we're looking at background studies, public consultation, drafting. We do have to do a little bit more provincial consultation now. So that can happen around the public consultation as well. It's really just sending stuff off to departments. And finally, we move into the formal adoption process by council. But hopefully, if we've done all the work on the front end, we can move through that relatively quickly. You know, the last time we did end up spending a lot of time in council workshopping things, and I think we can move a little bit quicker this time and involve council a little bit more as we go through the process. So by the end of it, everybody's on the same page. But I will be coming back to present more in depth, and certainly happy to talk about it more then.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gropin. Any questions? Councilor Harlan.
So, Xander, who does all that background work? You?
It won't just be me, but I will certainly be managing that. Hopefully there's some other staff helping as well. But yeah, it's a lot of research. It's a lot of mapping, which if you know me, you know I enjoy. And having worked in the town for 5 years, and we did do a background study for the old town back in 2019, 2020. So that information isn't super out of date. Some of the other things we look at too are demographics. We also have a lot of other work that we can sort of pull in, regional work we've done, like on housing, where we did look at St. Andrews specifically. So that's kind of already ready to go, with maybe a little bit of updating recreation we've done a lot of work on. So it will end up being a pretty hefty document, and a fair amount of work will have gone into it. But it's not, it's totally doable, is what I'm trying to say.
So, so by the time you go to public, or the process goes to public consultation, will we have had an opportunity to have eyes on it? Or it goes to public consultation?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And Xander did help us a little bit last time we did a municipal plan, just a little bit. How many meetings was that?
I wouldn't be here without it.
How many meetings was that? Like 30 something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot.
All right. So I don't think anything really needs consensus on that. It was just more of an update. So thank you very much. Unless anyone has any more questions. Okay, we are going on to new business at this time. I'll go to Deputy Mayor Akaji for the one that falls kind of under Finance Administration.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. FA 230820. And this is the Active Transportation Fund resolution. So the background is this. In January of 2023, the town of St. Andrews was awarded funds to install an active transportation lane on the Prince of Wales Street. The town has been moving through some revisions to the agreement based on work that was completed on Prince of Wales Street in 2022. The funds allocated to the town through the Active Transportation Fund are $418,500. As part of the process, they require a resolution of the council to sign into an agreement with the federal government for the Active Transportation Funds. So the motion is this: that the council of the town of St. Andrews can confirm that it meets all the requirements of Canada Active Transportation Fund Agreement, and that the town clerk can be authorized to execute the agreement on behalf of the town of St. Andrews. And I so move this, Your Worship.
Thank you. A seconder for that one. I've got Councillor Heenan. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That is everybody. It has been carried. Thank you very much. And then just the last new item under new business that we did with the amended agenda is we do have a request to use the Wellness Center for a Healthy Seniors pilot project. It would be, basically, it'd be a resource center at the end of the day. You do have the letter before you from Caroline Davies. I think my only concern, I think you're just looking for some consensus if it's okay with council. My only concern is that that it is kind of an annual thing, just in case there was ever an opportunity for a dentist to actually come in there. And the other thing is that we also check with the Dunn Foundation. They fund it basically half of the wellness center at the end of the day. I do know that with Mr. Taylor, the dentist is an important element of kind of their family history, and it was under the vision of Lady Beaverbrook as well to have all of the professionals under one. But with that being said, is it's been sitting vacant for quite some time. So as long as those are okay, then I'm good. And I do know that the Wellness Center staff is aware of that and seem to be supportive of that as well. Maybe I'll pass it over to Councillor Harlan.
Yes, and I've been involved in the development of the proposal. We've been very supportive of this. We have reached out to Tom Taylor.
Perfect.
He is very supportive.
Great.
Understanding that this is project funding. We hope that it will become permanent funding, but then we hope that it might have a space at the new nursing home or not, whatever, but we hope that we will eventually get permanent funding as well. It's a very exciting opportunity. The other plus with having it as part of this wellness center is that the staff who will be part of the resource center will have an opportunity to consult and collaborate with our staff. So I think that's a real plus.
Perfect, yeah. And some of the things that are relevant, I had the opportunity obviously to sit down with Councillor Harlan and Caroline Davies, is like, there's programs out there for seniors to get reductions in power bills, for example. And there's all these things that are out there that, a lot of them are all online, but to actually have someone there to help them and walk them through it and educate them, there is some opportunity for our residents. So that is the idea behind this pilot project that would be funded by the province of New Brunswick. So any other questions on that? I'll be looking for consensus to say that council is okay with that use.
Yes.
All in favor?
All in favor.
Sounds good. There's consensus for you. Thank you. Very quick work, council. We are jumping into question period. We lost a lot of people in the audience in that long meeting, the hundreds and hundreds that were here tonight. But we do have one member. Yeah, any questions for you? All right, well, thank you for being here and thank you for lasting through the marathon. Is there anyone left online?
Anyone left?
Heather N., if you'd like to raise your hand if you have a question for council, please raise your hand now.
And while we're waiting, just to give a little bit of time, is there anything that was submitted online, Mr. Knopper?
I have not received anything online as of this point.
Perfect. And any hand?
No hands.
Sounds good. Question period. People, I think, feel for us being here this long. We are getting into councillor and deputy mayor's comments. Councillors, just be definitely say what you want to, but be specific. Deputy Mayor Akji.
I left my microphone on, sorry. I'd really like to thank Nate and the crew and the staff of St. Andrews for the Indigenous crosswalks around Indian Point. I have been telephoned, emailed, stopped on the street, that our feathers are bigger than the ones in St. Stephen, which is great because I said to Nate, don't go tiny, do what you have to do. And I'm so glad that we ordered our own stencil, but I do know that NBCC may be borrowing it because theirs is so dinky tiny. But I love the feathers. I love the orange. I love the fact that it enters and closes on Indian Point, and it is fantastic. I've just been comments, not just from my family, but from everybody who's seen it on Facebook. I don't do Facebook, but they certainly can find me to tell me that it looks awesome, and I'd like to thank everybody that had a part into it, but the painting is fantastic. I'm just really, really happy. I'd like to thank, I know our recreation person, Mr. Hanselpecker. It's his job to do, all the different activities, but the music in the square on Saturday, and then New Brunswick Day, the Antique Market. I mean, all of those things were phenomenal this week, and I still saw a lot of people in the town of St. Andrews. Mind you, I'd like to find a parking spot, hint, hint, with my name on it. But anyway.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, it could be. I stick my card on my car just to park in their spots, but I'm sure that I'm going to get dinged one of these days. But anyway, very, very thankful for the wonderful job that he did and the fact that we had activities on New Brunswick Day, which we normally do, but he's had a significant influence of making them all, all the activities being coordinated. So I'm really thankful for him. Wally won. Anyway, and then the last thing I want to state is the Sapayak, which is in the United States of America near Eastport, but it is the Beskotomakati First Nations home in Maine, and they're having their powwow on Sunday afternoon. So you're invited to come on that day to partake in the dances, hear the music, the drumming, and they have vendors so that you can buy things there as well. Got to get American money, but some vendors do take Canadian money, and then they have a traditional meal, usually at the schoolhouse. So I hope that since COVID is over and everything's back to normal, they will do that again, so you can get your moose meat and your bannock that's sold, your fried dough bread, I guess they call it different things in different places, but you can get it there, and it's really good, the Indian tacos and all that stuff. So please come out. Please enjoy the activities and the celebration. I forget which number this is, but has been celebrated for years as Indian Day. So thank you very much. Wally won.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor.
All my relations.
Any other member of council? Councillor Ware.
I'll keep it brief. Mr. Spear mentioned the dam and the water levels. He kept me fully informed. I knew what the water was going over the dam every day, and made it a lot easier for me to deal with people at the lake. I think one thing he did not mention was the stability of the dam and whether it could stand the extra pressure. And I don't know whether you did it yourself or had an engineer do it or what, but I know the dam was checked that it could handle the extra, I don't know how many pounds.
Substantial.
6.25 pounds down.
Yeah.
But any of you that were following the flood in Nova Scotia,
Yes.
in Bridgewater, the cause of the flood at Fancy Lake and Conqueror Mills was that the town did take off 2 logs off the dam, and that caused the flood within the town. So Chris was keeping an eye on the structural integrity of the dam, as well as keeping me informed on the water levels. And the garbage issue, he brought that up again. He's been super dealing with me on that, and I'm not going to get into the details of it, but it's a daily thing. The other thing I would like to comment on is first 5 months or so of this new council, we kept talking about the rural area. We kept talking about the wards and Ward 1 and Ward 2. But sometime in June, it all disappeared. And it was Shamcook and Bayside and the town. And I was extremely pleased that I don't see Ward 1 and 2, and I don't see the rural area. I see Shamcook and Bayside. And I want to thank everybody for making the effort to make it an inclusive group.
Thank you, Councillor. Perfect. Any other member of council? Okay. I myself actually have 2 things. I'll have a negative and a positive, so I'll start with a negative to end positive. I just want to bring to council's attention something that I'm going to put higher at the radar. I brought it up at the RC table. If you look at St. Andrews or you look at New Brunswick, we finally had an opportunity to grow. We finally have a lot of positivity happening in the province. Reason to believe, people are young, people are moving home too, and they're having careers because they can work from anywhere. But one of the things that is becoming abundantly clear is that our cell phone coverage is diminishing significantly across this province, and St. Andrews is no exception. There's a number of places in the Shamcook Bayside and St. Andrews, just to make sure everyone knows I'm talking all of them, that had reception before, and it's gotten a lot worse. So it is something that I have highlighted at the RSC. I'm going to bring it back up. They wanted a little bit of time on it, but I think it's time to work with the other ministers because people that are working from home right now need that resource, and it's also emergencies. It's a lot of other things. And really to take a step backwards with what we had a few years ago doesn't make any sense to me. And I don't know if it's because there's an increase in population. I don't know if it's necessarily because of aging infrastructure. I don't know if it's decommissioned towers. Whatever the case may be, a lot of users across New Brunswick, and I've checked in other communities, are saying the exact same thing, and that's just not acceptable in today's age. Again, if we want to keep momentum in New Brunswick, those are the small things that do matter. I know family doctors and everything are very important, but working from home, a lot of people work from a cell phone, and it's really holding us back. So that's just something I want to highlight that's on my radar, and I think it's a challenge for a lot of people across New Brunswick right now. The positive, I just wanted to highlight that I guess I was a little critical, and as was council, but we had a very productive meeting with both the sergeants of the RCMP a few weeks ago. And I will say that despite a lot of criticism, and some of you might have heard me on radio and stuff like that talking about the lack of coverage, I will say the last few weeks I've seen a significant increase in police presence. I've seen a significant increase in the results in making arrests. I've seen a significant increase in warrants out for arrest, and I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that yes, we were critical, but I can actually see the needle moving a little bit in a positive direction. There's been some very critical arrests that have been made across Charlotte County, and as they continue to do this, of course, we need the courts to do their job, but this will help make Charlotte County a safer place. And I think it's important when they are really working hard to improve the situation that we also acknowledge that. And I don't know about you, but I see a huge difference. And that meeting we had with the sergeants versus just read a report, we talked about the importance of communication and doing more press releases on what's going on. They've done that. So you see it a lot right now. And personally, there was a couple of files that I was involved with the community because people were calling me. And I can honestly say that both of the individuals that I was getting calls on, the RCMP has handled them, and actually they're no longer in our community because they did break the law. Again, at this point, they're not guilty, but they are being processed through the court system. So I just wanted to say, again, acknowledge the RCMP, and let's keep it going because Charlotte County, it is a safe place to live. St. Andrews is a very safe place to live, but you see the crime increasing all across Canada, and you don't want to become complacent. We need to stay on top of it to keep the community that's so special to us. So that's my positive. All right, so we've gone through question period, our comments. We're going into closed session now, so at 9:45 p.m., which, wow. Council moved to go into closed session for the Local Governance Act, Section 68(1)C, which is information that could cause financial loss or gain to a person or the local government or could jeopardize negotiations leading to an agreement or contract. F, information concerning legal opinions or advice provided to the local government by its solicitor or privileged communications between solicitor and client in a matter of local government business. And J, labor and employment matters, including the negotiation of collective agreements. Could I have a mover for that one? I've got Councillor Neal, and then I'll give it to Councillor Bennett. All in favor of going to closed session, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And anyone opposed? We're in closed session. Thank you very much for being here.
Recording
Appreciate it.
stopped.
Thank you, CHCO.